across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good evening. This is the Evening Exchange. I'm Peter Cardwell, and what a dramatic day in politics has it been, not least at Prime Minister's Questions. Kemi Badenoch wasn't taking any prisoners whatsoever. She went for Ed Miliband, she went for Bridget Phillips and the Education Secretary, and she certainly went for Keir Starmer and Andy Burnham too. We'll reflect on all of that with Isabel Oakeshott in a minute or two. We'll also talk about what Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker, said to her, and Al Carnes refusing to rule himself out of a leadership race. Will he be challenging Andy Burnham? We will see. We'll also talk about Kemi Badenoch's demands that the Met Chief stop the people playing loud music, especially when there are public events like a Prime Minister resigning, and the SNP MP who can't seem to decide where she comes from and has two accents. She's half Scottish, half English, and her accent is too. Also, Zach Polanski slamming Burnham's reported choice of Chief of Staff. James Purnell may not be a hugely well-known name, although he was a Cabinet Minister, but certainly he's someone who could have far more influence than many Cabinet Ministers. We're going to talk as well about how to keep pets cool in the heat and keep yourself cool in the heat too, and the scandal of more than 500 mothers and babies who died or were harmed in a maternity scandal. We'll talk all about that a little bit later on as well, and the grooming gangs inquiry. We finally got some information about that. The first focus is going to be London, Oldham, Bradford and Keighley, apologies. We'll talk about the Fly the Flag petition as well from Reform UK, and a row about flags as well when it comes to the Liberal Democrats who are trying to stop people flying England flags on a lamppost in Oxfordshire. We'll find out why. Lots to discuss this evening, loads of really meaty topics, and as always I want to hear your views on all of them, wherever you are in the country or the world. Whatever you want to say, however you want to say it, get in touch. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 7222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a WhatsApp text message, you can send me a WhatsApp voice message, and if you keep them around a minute, we'll make sure as many of those are played out as possible. You can also give me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Let's get started on the Evening Exchange here on Talk. Well, Kemi Badenoch, I think, had one of her most bombastic Prime Minister's Questions earlier. I wonder what you think about her style, because the Speaker certainly wasn't happy. Some have criticised it, and there was a war of words afterwards, reportedly, when Liz Kendall, who's one of the Cabinet Secretaries, she is, I think it's Technology and Science, that is her brief, and Bridget Phillips and the Education Secretary, not happy with how Kemi Badenoch conducted herself. But maybe you think it's all fair game. Politics is a brutal business. But her main criticism was for Keir Starmer, and indeed for Andy Burnham, the King of the North, who may well be Prime Minister, almost certainly will be Prime Minister in a few weeks' time. Let's just take a look at a little bit of what Kemi Badenoch said specifically on Andy Burnham.
He has been let down by an energy secretary who is killing industry, let down by a chancellor who is killing jobs, let down by backbenchers who don't understand that government is about tough choices. He U-turned again and again and again to appease them, and now they've abandoned him. And what for? A pair of eyelashes and a black T-shirt.
Brutal. Also, Al Carnes has told Channel 4 News that he's still mulling over whether to run for Labour leader. Could Andy Burnham face an opponent from the Armed Forces Minister? We interviewed him on this programme last week. Let's see what Al Carnes has been telling Channel 4 News about this.
Are you seriously considering a run still?
Yeah, I think this is probably the most serious decision and discussion that we need to have. We have 3 years left of a Labour government. We've got to get this right. So I don't think there's anything more serious than this. And it's to make sure that we have the right policy platform as we step off. And that's primarily to defeat Reform Conservative coalition in 2029. You
need 81 backers. Are you anywhere near that?
So I'm not going to talk about numbers. It'll be down to the PLP, the Labour Party MPs, to decide. There are large chunks of different groups across the Labour Party that want to have this discussion. I think there'll be hustings in due course, I've heard, which is good, so we'll be able to put those policy ideas before. I'd be really clear, if the policy platform described by Andy Burnham or anyone else is solid, productive, courageous and bold, then I will jump on that bandwagon and move as hard and fast as we can to 2029 to get this country moving on the right track.
What is it about what Andy Burnham has said so far that you're not quite sure about?
Well, I actually agree. If you just step back and have a look what he's achieved, he's done a fantastic job in Makerfield. He's done a really good job in Manchester. He won by 20 points in Makerfield on a constituency that was in reform previously. That's demonstrated real leadership and that the country wants something different. I think that's fantastic. So I agree with almost everything he said, but I'd like to see the policy plan as we move forward.
Al Carn speaking to Channel 4 News a little bit earlier on today. Isabel Oakeshott, our international editor, is with us. Isabel, it was a particularly bruising and brutal Prime Minister's questions. I just wonder what you make of how Kemi Badenoch performed today.
Well, I must admit, I really liked it. I thought it was punchy, direct, entertaining, and uncompromising. And I'm particularly glad that she is taking on Bridget Phillipson, that class warrior who made it her mission in the earliest days of her job as Secretary of State for Education to set about ruining the futures of a whole load of young people who were at private schools which have since been forced to close. I understand that there definitely appears to be, no one is denying, a bit of a set-to between Kemi and Bridget Phillipson and apparently Liz Kendall, another Labour figure, behind the scenes after Prime Minister's questions, in which the two Labour women basically turned on Kemi and said, words to the effect of, what the hell do you think you're doing, being so spiteful? And Kemi said, well, I'm never going to stop attacking you, words to the effect of, because of what you've done to young people, to children.
Yeah, she's meant to have said, I will never stop fighting you, you're destroying children's lives. And Bridget Phillipson is meant to have said, Kemi lost her head at PMQs and afterwards too. It's not the first time she compared me to a Gestapo officer. I wonder what it is about working class women driving record investment in state schools by ending private schools tax breaks that the Tories hate so much.
Why does she have to mention class the whole time? It's so boring and so feeble Labour student politics. I actually thought, everyone knows I'm not a Tory, but I want to give credit where it's due. I thought Kemi was excellent today. And it was entertaining. Now, I know that's not the point of Prime Minister's questions. It's not supposed to be entertaining, but it's better if it is entertaining because at least we're engaging in what they're saying.
We've talked about what they said behind the scenes. Let's just take a look at what Kemi Badenoch said about Bridget Phillipson at Prime Minister's questions time publicly.
Hands up if you think the Education Secretary is doing a good job. Even she doesn't think she's doing a good job, Mr. Speaker. Even she doesn't think she's doing a good job. Someone did. Just for those who raised their hands, the two people who raised their hands, yesterday a poll found that 0% of teachers think the Education Secretary is doing a good job. 0%. She taxed private schools to pay for more teachers, but the number of teachers has gone down. It turns out appointing a spiteful class warrior as Education Secretary was a disaster.
Kemi Badenoch calling the Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson a spiteful class warrior. She also talked about Labour MPs more generally and had quite the turn of phrase when she talked about Keir Starmer being removed.
I'm so proud that she is sitting there, and so should everybody in this country who cares about social mobility. Knows that for poor children, education is absolutely vital, and that is why it drives every single priority and value that she has. I would have thought the party opposite would recognise and understand some of that, but they've fallen so low they don't.
The fact is that if she knew so much about poor children, she wouldn't have given them fewer teachers. Teacher numbers have gone down. Teacher numbers have gone down. It's amazing. I've never seen this much excitement on the Labour benches. Yes, cheering so loudly while there are 400 knives stuck in his back. Shame on them. Shame on them. They don't like it up them, but they know that what I'm saying is true.
Well, it was interesting, some of that language, spiteful class warrior, 400 knives in Keir Starmer's back, and they don't like it up them. This was actually remarked upon. We don't know which one of those three things that Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker, was particularly annoyed about, but this is what he said.
Sorry, Prime Minister. Can I just say, let us think about the language we're using. I think that'll be the first to leave, please. Can I just say, think about the language we're using, because when we leave this chamber, don't be surprised when constituents feel they can use the same language against each other. Let us show a little bit more decorum and respect to each other.
Isabel, was the Speaker right to say what he did, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, there?
Well, I think that the phrase that he probably found objectionable was "they don't like it up them." I must admit, I was kind of like, wow, taken aback when that language was used. That is not parliamentary language. I don't think either you or I, sorry to have used it on the radio, I wouldn't use that phrase broadcasting except in this context. And it just isn't really diplomatic, grown-up language, is it, for a place of the importance of the House of Commons. So I think Lindsay Hoyle was probably right to make that point, and I think he made it well. You know, what he was basically saying is, if we debase ourselves in this way, we as MPs, then how can we expect to be treated and spoken to politely, respectfully by constituents? And I think that was a point well made. You know, a lot of MPs cheered at that point. I think he was right, you know, and they've got to nip this stuff in the bud. There's perfect ways of making a powerful point, of teasing, of ribbing, of you know, landing a blow, isn't there, without having to be vulgar.
Speaking of parliamentary language, or more accurately, accent, there's a bizarre thing that has emerged with the new MP, the new SNP MP, who is an interesting character. She's someone who is, unsurprisingly, very pro-Palestinian. She is an international law student, PhD student. She gets, according to reports, something like £50,000 a year, a very high amount of money for a scholarship, from something called the Queen Mother Scholarship. Now, this is someone who crossed her fingers when she was herself swearing an oath of allegiance to the King, the grandson of said Queen Mother. And her actual name, she calls herself Lara Bird, but her actual name is Paila Lara Bird Leakey, which, not to be classist, but does sound reasonably posh. Let's just hear what she said in Parliament on Monday, I should say, when she was swearing allegiance, and just listen to her accent.
I take this oath only so that I can serve the people of Arbroath and Broughty Ferry. My first allegiance is, and always will be, the sovereign people of Scotland. I do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles, his heirs and successors, according to the law, so help me God.
So far, so Scottish. But hold on, how does she really talk? Let's hear this.
Make recognition of their state, a state that already exists, a state that has existed for longer than the state of Israel has, for many, many, many generations, for the UK government to completely undermine the humanity of those people, of the Palestinian people.
This oath only so that I can serve the people of Arbroath and Broughty Ferry. My first allegiance is, and always will be, the sovereign people of Scotland.
So, two very different accents. Look, I grew up in Northern Ireland for the first half of my life. I've lived in England, basically, for the second half of my life. My accent has probably changed a little bit, but there are very few people who don't think that I'm from Northern Ireland. I've never pretended to be from England, apart from when I was talking to Kevin a little bit earlier on, and that was a joke. Isabel, what do you make of this?
I love this story because when I was listening to her, I grew up in Scotland. You know, we moved up there, although I have an English accent. So I'm very, very keenly aware of how it is to have an English accent in Scotland. We lived there from when I was the age of 3 right up until my late 20s. And my accent always made me stand out. Listening to her, I thought, which part of Scotland is that accent from? There was something just a tiny bit off about it. I mean, I think that's an Edinburgh accent, insofar as it's a Scottish accent at all. It sounds to me like she's modelled it on an Edinburgh accent, because there are so many different Scottish accents, of course. Then to hear the English accent, well, no one has both of those accents. You're either one of those people or the other. Which is it?
Well, exactly. Will the real what is her name? Will the real Pyla Lara Bird-Leaky please stand up and perhaps not cross her fingers when she's swearing an oath of allegiance to the King? Isabel, thank you. Great to talk to you, as always. And an SNP spokesman said Lara Bird MP is half Scottish, half English. She grew up in Scotland and has also lived in England. Unlike Nigel Farage's Reform Party, the SNP doesn't judge people on their accents or where they're from. What? Nor do the people of Arbroath and Brodie Ferry, who elected Lara Bird MP with a majority of 5,278 votes, while the Reform Party trailed behind in a distant third place. I'm not really sure what this has got to do with Reform UK. Certainly, I know Darren Jones, who is a Reform UK councillor, is probably one of the first people who pointed this out and found this, her, wanging on about the Palestinian people. Obviously, it's very important that they have rights, but, she doesn't really appear to care too much about Israeli rights. But being half Scottish, half English doesn't entitle you to two accents. I wonder what you think about this. 0344 499 1000, or indeed anything else. Was Kemi Badenoch being reasonable when she made those points in Prime Minister's questions? We also have some breaking news, and that is that the world's top tennis players are to protest over Wimbledon prize money. The players, both men and women, will limit their contractual media commitments to just 15 minutes, reflecting that Wimbledon currently pays slightly below the 15% of revenues to players as prize money for the duration of the first week of the championships. Following detailed consultation with players across both tours, player representatives have written to Wimbledon's leadership to inform them of the planned action, while acknowledging the welcome recent 20% increase in prize money compared with last year's championships. So there we are. Wimbledon starts on Monday. Hopefully it'll be a little bit cooler. Loads to discuss. We're going to the debate desk with Candace Holsworth, and Kai will be with us as well. Wilshaw, of course. Kai Wilshaw. Apologies for forgetting his surname there. Thank you to everybody who has been in touch. June, who says they don't like it up them, is from the comedy Dad's Army. I think you're right. Yeah, I seem to remember seeing that episode, and I think it's been used in various contexts. But is it actually appropriate parliamentary language? Leslie says, why did Starmer talk about Phillipson being brought up in poverty? We will all be in poverty if this government carries on. Also, the thing is, Bridget Phillipson does have a remarkable story. She has gone from a very impoverished background to, being one of the most powerful people in the country. But just because someone's background is, poor working class, you don't have to go on and on and on about that. What Keir Starmer could have said was talked about what he believes, anyway, to be her achievements as Education Secretary. And frankly, I would find it a bit patronising if someone just went on about my background all the time. Penny says, good evening, Peter. Not sure about Kemi. She's a good talker and catches Starmer with his trousers down regularly. But will she fare any better with Burnham, who I think is much brighter than Starmer? Only time will tell, says Penny. Betty says, the problem with Labour and all the woke civil public services is the mandated 60% women in all roles and not allowed to be held accountable. All issues are men's fault. Let Kemi loose on all of them. The Chancellor cries and wipes 3 points of GDP. I'm not sure that target of 60% is there, but I do think diversity is far too much of a focus. Leslie says Kemi was spot on. At least she didn't call them scum. Two-tier PMQs. And Mark and Selby says Al Cairns will only throw his hat into the ring to give Burnham more time to find some policies and fill his cabinet. In return, Al may get a seat at the cabinet. Fishy, huh? I don't think Al Cairns has a snowball's chance of becoming Prime Minister. I do think he has a very good chance of becoming Defence Secretary, though. We'll talk about all of that with our debate desk regulars in just a second. Let me know your thoughts too. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
We've got some breaking news that has just come in. talkSPORT have announced a brand new partnership in a developing story. We hear they've created So Good Lager right in time for football's big summer. Just in, we're hearing that So Good Lager will be pouring pints across all O'Neill's pubs and some of the best sports pubs across the UK. With the big kickoff just around the corner, you can find out where to get your hands on a fresh pint of So Good Lager at talksport.com/lager.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
One texter says there's no stopping Kemi today. Think Rachel and especially Bridget Phillipson almost in tears. No wonder Starmer is going. She wins every time. That's Margaret in Birmingham who says Starmer's on his travels again. I think think about the air miles for Never Hear Keir. He is actually at this moment in Germany. He's also going to NATO in another month as well. Nicola in Norfolk says, I thought Kemi was brilliant today and simply said it how it is. Labour can dish it out and can't take it. They're pathetic with their outrage. I just want to do one voice note in a second, but I want to also just read you something that was sent to me today by a very loyal viewer of this station who wants to stay anonymous, and it's just about the fact that this person, it's a woman, was scammed, and she just wanted me to read this out to make sure everybody else is aware. She said, "Hi Peter, yesterday I was a victim of a scam caller purporting to be from my bank. I was under a lot of stress already. I was looking after my granddaughter and my daughter's dog in the heat. While driving, I received the call. He knew my name, address, last 4 digits of my card. I received a text message from my bank with a code which I stupidly gave to the caller to proceed with cancelling my card on Apple Pay. In fact, that code enabled him to add my card to his Apple Pay. I stopped the car and started a chat conversation with my bank. While doing so and still talking to this piece of scum, I saw a transaction paid out to Argos of £219. I then knew it was a scam. I told them so. I hung up. The transaction is still showing pending but can't be stopped after waiting until it's fully gone through before raising a dispute with my bank. After 30 minutes of trying to contact Argos without success, I gave up. I reported the crime to Action Fraud, who were very empathetic. Mentally, it tipped me over the edge yesterday. I couldn't stop crying. I've decided to share my experience in the hope that you or some others won't make the same mistake, and also because sharing is one way I cope in difficult times." Well, listen, to that viewer who wants to remain anonymous, I'm very happy to keep you anonymous, but I do want to say our sympathies are with you. These things do happen, and I know, there's a very intelligent person who's pretty close to me, actually, who was scammed on one occasion, and this person just felt absolutely dreadful afterwards. It does happen. Be wary out there, guys. Definitely, you need to be aware of who's ringing you and who's asking you for all those bits of information. Also today, we got a voice note. We've got a voice note now from Tom in Belfast, and this is actually about a very interesting point, because it's a really hot day today. It's the hottest day, I think. It's hottest summer anyway, hottest June in 50 years. But what do we do with that? How do we actually survive and thrive as a country, especially if we are going to have slightly hotter temperatures? Really interesting voice note from Tom in Belfast. Just listen to this.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the guys I'm in business with, he was trying to get some temps in, so they contacted the job centre, and they said they sent everybody home because it's too warm. And I just looked out the front of the house. There's a young lad who's just passed his driving test. He immediately set up a car valeting business, and he's valeted 4 of our cars. He got there before 8 o'clock this morning, and he finished about an hour ago and knocked his pan on all day. I have a funny feeling he won't be working in the job centre.
So the job centre in Northern Ireland, which is cooler than the south of England and south of Wales, which is hitting, what's it hitting today? Nearly 40 degrees, apparently. Closed the job centre. This was a business associate of Tom in Belfast, who then said he wanted to actually hire people. Job centre's closed because it's too hot. But here we go. Here's a young lad, who's just passed his driving test, getting out there, setting up a car valeting business. Maybe he'll do that for the rest of his life. Maybe he won't. But he's making money, and he's a doer and getting there and working in the heat, which sometimes you have to do. I just found both the scam story and that story about the entrepreneurial young man just very, very interesting, and telling us quite a lot, I think, about our society at the moment. There's so much to think about in regard to the politics of the day as well, and I'm delighted to be joined by Candace Holsworth. Hello, how are you?
I'm melting, but surviving.
You're there. And the former Labour advisor, Kai Wilshaw. Kai, how are you doing?
Very good, very good.
Are you burning up or burning up?
Well, I was accused today of having got a bit of sunburn.
Right.
But it is Labour red, as you
Oh, is it?
observe.
Okay,
yeah.
okay,
I'm
well.
here for Burnham.
You're right, okay. Well, we'll talk a little bit about all of that. We've also, one thing that's interesting as well is that it appears that Andy Burnham has appointed James Purnell as his Chief of Staff. Now, people sitting at home might, or in their van or wherever they're watching or listening to this, might think, James Purnell rings a dim bell, but who's that and why does he matter? The point is that a Chief of Staff in Downing Street, which may well be the case if Andy Burnham becomes Prime Minister, which looks very, very likely, would be James Purnell. He's a former Cabinet Minister, so you might have heard his name before. He worked for the BBC in a senior position as well. He was Culture Secretary, he was working Pensions Secretary. But the Chief of Staff is a really, really important person, far more important than most Cabinet Ministers. Zach Polanski, the leader of the Green Party, has called James Purnell a Blair tribute act. Is that fair, Kai?
No. It's not. Look, Zach Polanski is playing fantasy politics, as always, and he comes from a tradition of the left that I think does the left a disservice. A tradition that says business has no part to play in our politics. We don't want any of the influence peddling that he presumably thinks James Purnell would bring. Actually, lots of the errors in delivery that Rachel Reeves is accused of can be traced back a little bit to not working with business, not consulting with business, but rather doing things to businesses. Things like the national insurance hike, and then later hospitality carve-outs that were gleaned from Labour MPs who lobbied for that because they know just how damaging things would be for that industry. The Workers' Rights Act is being blamed for lots of the sort of unemployment issues that we're having now. These are all areas where actually an understanding of business could help.
Yes.
But of course, Chief of Staff isn't going to be doing that. The Chief of Staff role
but they can
is
set
about
the tone.
managing.
They can set the tone. It's interesting. Do you know what? I had lunch today with a young journalist. I tried, sorry, not to virtue signal or big myself up or say Mother Teresa, but I tried to mentor a number of young journalists because, you know, a lot of people were very nice to me 20 years ago. And he's someone who works for, it's probably not right to say exactly where he works, but he works for a financial publication. And he said he just cannot get through to the senior people near Rachel Reeves. They don't brief him, they don't tell him stuff as a journalist. And you think, this is someone who is actually in a reasonably senior role at a young age, who can get in touch with the City of London, with financial people. And that, to me, it just denotes an attitude, really, that needs to change.
100%. Look, you hear that from business leaders as well, who I have talked to, who say that the early innings of this government was, they were hearing the right things. In opposition, the Labour Party did a lot to try and make overtures to business. That's completely broken down. You see that just a few weeks ago when Rachel Reeves, in response to price inflation after the Iran war kicked off, tried to haul supermarkets in. They said, no ball, no, we don't want to play your game.
Candace, your thoughts?
I'm interested to hear this. I'm not expecting this at all. Yes, so I would say that I think that the way that Rachel Reeves has conducted herself towards business has been unnecessarily adversarial. I mean, there was a report that in Scotland, a businessman confronted her about their policy around oil and gas. And instead of just listening to him, she called him a misogynist. I mean, when the fact of the matter is, that's actually caused them to lose a by-election in Scotland. So, I mean, like, they came like distant last because people are so angry the way Labour's behaving. I think, though, what's very interesting is Zach Polanski is flexing his muscles a little bit and applying a bit of pressure.
We haven't heard a huge amount from him in a while.
No, and you know what? It was pivotal to the Makerfield by-election. Andy Burnham won because the Greens and the Lib Dems were willing to step back, not to campaign hard, to unite behind the left-wing candidate. I mean, obviously they're motivated by wanting to stop the right, but they also, I think, they know that they've got a bit of leverage and they can push things a bit. And I just wonder if you'll hear from him more and more if he thinks that Labour's becoming centrist.
What do you think Andy Burnham believes, Kai? economically anyway, when it comes to who you appoint as a chancellor, for example?
Look, I mean, it's all of Westminster's trying to figure that out right now, right?
But
and
why?
There's a lot of different motivations.
David Whitting, who was on yesterday, right? Former political editor of the News of the World, senior person on the Sun on Sunday, former editor of the Sunday Express, and he said to me last night, "I've known Andy Burnham for 30 years, and I don't know what he believes politically." Like, how is that possible?
I think it speaks to, actually, and I've thought about this a little bit. People try to paint him as, oh, he's just going to be a leftist now. That's what he's seen as now. Actually, people are more nuanced than that. It's a bit like Angela Rayner, right, where people try to paint her as a total leftist, when in fact on lots of things like crime and immigration, she's much more reasonable and in line with the British public than you might expect.
You don't think Angela Rayner's in line with the British public on immigration, really?
Yeah. Well, she wrote that cabinet memo back about a year and a half ago, saying that was an early indicator that at that time the Labour government wasn't really taking the immigration issue as seriously. Shabana Mahmood wasn't in post. Didn't seem like they were giving the right signals. And at that time, that stood out to me as something that showed she understood the depth of the concern about immigration in this country. I think Andy Burnham is a bit the same. I think the way he'll govern is in line with this idea that he's a bit of a chameleon, taking the best ideas.
It's really interesting you mention that, because I do remember, a lot of people will forget this because Tony Blair became so ideological towards the end, particularly on the war in Iraq. But at the start, people thought he was, lick the finger, see which way the wind is blowing. Yeah. I wonder whether we should know what Andy Burnham thinks. Do you feel you know, Candice?
I have snippets of what he thinks. Look, he had a very specific idea for Manchester, his whole idea of Manchester, which was a lot of investment in infrastructure. He called it reindustrialisation. It's not my idea of reindustrialisation. He focuses a lot more on green technologies, whereas I'd be more than happy to bring heavy industry back, things like fracking, way more investment in oil and gas. I would say that if we increase defence spending, you could have booming defence industry, manufacturing heavy arms, things like that. So, yeah, I have an idea of what he thinks, but I don't know. So I think he's trying to pitch himself towards the north. They are trying to
Well, he's already said he wants to move Downing Street or some of the Downing Street operations out there. We'll talk about that actually in a second when we come back. Let me just read out a couple of messages, not least on the accent gate in regard. We will get to that with Kai and Candice, both of whom. Do you know what? I don't know about you. People from the southeast of England who say they don't have an accent, when the three of us, of course, all of us know we have an accent of a different accent from the southeast of England. The number of people I went to university with went, well, I don't have an accent. It's like, well, you demonstrably do. G in London said, as a Scot who's lived in London for over 20 years, more than in Scotland, my brain says speak English as I hear it daily, and if I did it for 6 months solid, I would speak fully with an English accent, but I don't want to, and do find myself going between both. I grew up in the most deprived area of Europe during the 80s, the East End of Glasgow, and understood from a young age that class warriors like Phillips were not the answer. Only dreams and hard work will get you on in life. I thought Kemi was great at PMQs. We need more robust debate, not less. We will talk about that more in just a second, and on the accent question too. Alex in Cardiff, thanks for your message. I will reply to your email. Alex, I haven't got around to that yet, but I will, I promise. He says, I've been scammed and it is the worst feeling, and you feel so stupid afterwards. It's really not a victimless crime. It really affects your mental health. Thoughts and prayers to your loyal viewer, and you never really catch these people. I think that is probably true, Alex, and that is a very nice message, and I know that that loyal viewer, who shall remain nameless and anonymous, is watching at this exact moment and will be take great succour and comfort from what you said there, Alex. Lots more to come up on the debate desk. We'll talk about Accent Gate. We'll talk about Downing Street moving to Manchester. Not sure it quite works, but anyway, Kai seems to be in favour of it. We'll see what he thinks, and Candice too. Stay with us here on Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, let's hear a voice note from Maddie.
Hi Peter, this is Maddie calling from Essex. Loving the show as usual. Oh, did I say my name was Maddie? No, I meant to say my name is Mrs. Doubtfire. I think the sun's gone to my head and it's giving me a different accent. Thank you.
Maddie, my goodness, I just think Lara Bird, the bird brain, will be ribbed about this for a long time. Let's just remind ourselves of her two strangely contrasting accents.
Make recognition of their state, a state that already exists, a state that has existed for longer than the state of Israel has, for many, many, many generations, for the UK government to completely undermine the humanity of those people, of the Palestinian people.
This oath only so that I can serve the people of Arbroath and Broughty Ferry. My first allegiance is and always will be the sovereign people of Scotland. I do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles.
There's quite a lot of sass in that Scottish accent this whole time.
It's extraordinary.
It's a bit sort of. Do you remember those American talk shows back in the day, like Ricky Lake, and people would sort of do? Do you remember the sort of Z thing they did? Like that. It's very much like that.
She's a star in the making. I was talking to colleagues today. There's a distinct lack of camp in Parliament at the minute.
Yes, we need characters.
Well, you've got Emily Thornbury. She's quite camp.
Obviously.
Yes.
But you need the Michael Fabricants of the world to come back.
You do. They make life more interesting.
Yeah.
But have you ever heard of Hilaria Baldwin?
No.
She's Alec Baldwin's wife.
Right.
Who for years everyone thought she was Spanish.
Right.
She used to have a heavy Spanish accent. She even pretended she didn't know the words for things like, what do you say in English?
Yes.
Anyway, turned out she is like born and bred American.
That's really weird.
Yes, and for years she faked being Spanish.
Why?
People do this. Like, quite I'm not saying she's narcissistic, I don't know. But quite narcissistic people do this. They, like, create totally fake personas.
Right.
And, I mean, I would not be surprised if, like, a hardcore, you know, Palestine action activist person was
well,
like
she doesn't
that.
support Palestine action just because that would be illegal. But she's pro-Palestinian. Yes. Saving us both from the courtroom there.
Apologies for that. Would be like that because a lot of that is performative online, creating a persona, creating a facade. In our era, people do that. Yeah.
Very, very interesting. I mean, we all three of us are people who I would say at least once a day someone says to me, "Oh, you're from Northern Ireland." Someone yesterday said to me, "Oh, you're from Northern Ireland," or although it was quite funny, I was filling in for a Scottish presenter. I don't know if you know Colin MacDonald, who is on Times Radio, great guy, and I was filling in for him one morning on Times Radio, and we got a message in saying, "Are Callum and Peter from the same part of Scotland?" I'm from the part of Scotland that's very much Northern Ireland. So, Kai, how Welsh do you get?
I think I get a bit more Welsh. It does change. So when I get angry or if I've been talking Welsh, so Welsh is my first language, I talk with my family, and so if I've been talking to them, I get a bit more Welsh. Some words,
so Welsh is your first language?
It is indeed. Toothbrush.
Right.
Oh, my friend used to say that.
And year. As in the year 2026.
Yes.
Those are Welsh. English people don't say that, apparently.
Yeah. No, it's a very. I used to have a Welsh boss, and he certainly talked about years. Candice, you're from South Africa originally. You haven't lost that accent, or maybe it's been rounded a little bit.
Well, I'm from England originally, and then we moved to South Africa. So I've got this like weird hybrid accent, which I don't mind it.
I think it sounds pretty South African to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I definitely elongate certain words. Like I'll go, oh no, that's not safe.
That sounds Australian. That sounds Australian.
What about your children? Do they sound English?
Oh my God, they are London. They sound so London. Like just their pronunciations of things. They're like, what are you doing there? Like, what's for dinner, mum? And that sort of thing. I'm like,
right.
Oh my God! Like
I had a former boss actually in this building who is very much from Northern Ireland. Torda talks a bit like that and has never lost the accent despite living in England for many a year. And he's been in America quite a lot. His kids have been in America quite a lot, and he impersonates them going, you know, "Can I get a water?" SNP spokesman said Lara Bird MP is half Scottish, half English. She grew up in Scotland and has also lived in England. Unlike Nigel Farage's Reform UK party, the SNP doesn't judge people people on their accents or where they come from. Weird.
Oh.
A bit strange. Nor do the people of Arbroath and Brodie who elected Lara Bird MP with a majority of 5,278 votes, while the Reform Party trailed behind in a distant third place. This was originally put out by, I think, the clip anyway that we showed you of her having an English accent was a Reform councillor, Darren Jones, who was on the station a little bit earlier on. Glyn says accents. I remember John Barrowman bizarrely switching to a Scottish accent during one of his talks. And Peter says Andy Burnham has only one concern: to be Prime Minister. That would mean financially he never has to work again. Do we think that's a fair criticism of Andy Burnham? And why, Kai, do you think he wants to move some of the number 10 operations to Manchester?
Well, it's part of the whole platform that he's put forward, hasn't it?
But how can you devolve the Prime Minister's office when I mean, Manchester's a great city. I've been there a lot. I really, really like Manchester. London is the capital city of this country.
Yes. But I think this is more about having... Well, there's two parts to this, I think. There's one that is a bit of a stunt, right? It's a bit performative, but it shows people that he'll put his money where his mouth is. He's willing to work as Prime Minister in Manchester, or maybe across the country. I'd like to see him go elsewhere. Then there's another part of it that is the intent to move power throughout the country, and doing that symbolically through Downing Street first, because that is what he initially, he has direct control over. It's easier to move. So it's a sort of first step, maybe, before then legislating for more formal powers for other departments.
Well,
maybe
we have the Treasury has an office in Darlington. I don't really think devolution works. I don't think it's really worked in Northern Ireland. I don't think it's particularly worked in Scotland. I don't think it's particularly worked in Wales either. I think it's an unpopular view, and people generally are pro-devolution. What do you think, Candice? Could some number 10 functions be moved to Manchester or anywhere else?
I think that, like I said, I think they're trying to pitch themselves to the north. I think this is what this whole Makerfield test was about, that his vision for a revitalised north, Labour now reaching out to the people who feel left behind. So they're trying to capture the mood and the vibe that, say, Boris Johnson did a few years ago with the whole levelling up.
Yeah.
But obviously in a much more left-wing way. They want, they're using that sort of language, which kind of works in parts of the north, which I actually know very well, because despite my accent, my family are all from the north of England. The North leans right on social and cultural issues, but it leans left on economic issues. And that's very easy for Labour to capture that sort of sentiment. However, I think they will fall down on being as conservative on immigration as people in the North want them to be. I think that could be a real problem for them.
Kai, we have a request. Now, I am trusting you here, Kai, okay? Because I don't speak Welsh. And Ollie says he would like to hear you speaking Welsh. Can you say something that's not going to get us in trouble? Do not use this as an opportunity to swear in Welsh, if you wouldn't mind.
Of course. Well, luckily the Welsh swear words are pretty bad. You just don't want to use them. Mae'n wych I fod fan hyn yn Llundain am y sioe radio a teledu yma fan hyn, siarad am y prif weinidog I fod, wrth gwrs, Andy Burnham, a digon mwy I ddod heno.
And what does that mean?
I said it's great to be here in London, here on radio and television. We're going to be talking about plenty tonight, including Andy Burnham and lots more to come.
Marvellous. Can you say the longest town name in Wales? Is that possible?
I can.
Go.
Llanfair Pwllgwyngyll go gerwch chwil drobol Llandasilio go go goch.
I mean, it does look... very well done. That's very...
Lots of consonants.
There are 58 letters in there, and it does slightly look as if someone's fallen asleep on a keyboard.
A cat.
Go ahead, do it again.
Llanfair Pwllgwyngyll go gerwch chwil drobol Llandasilio go go goch.
Now, Candice. We'll take a break. We'll talk. Yeah, very good. Can you say something in Afrikaans for us? Keep it clean.
Ek is gelukkig om hier te wees met jou.
Which is?
I'm happy to be here with you.
Lovely. I can't speak Irish apart from to say Chucky Arla, which means our day will come, which is the battle cry of the IRA, and that is one of the few bits of Irish I know. Although I do know what Pogue Mahone is, and if you know what that is, don't repeat it. Stay with us here on Talk. We will make sure that we discuss some more topics on the debate desk with Kai and with Candice in just a second.
We've got some breaking news that has just come in. talkSPORT have announced a brand new partnership in a developing story. We hear they've created So Good Lager right in time for football's big summer. Just in, we're hearing that So Good Lager will be pouring pints across all O'Neill's pubs and some of the best sports pubs across the UK. With the big kickoff just around the corner, you can find out where to get your hands on a fresh pint of So Good Lager at talksport.com/lager.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Johnny from Cardwell says, who remembers Steve McLaren when he started coaching a Dutch team and he started giving interviews with an attempted Dutch accent? Was it was it Joey Barton? It was certainly a footballer who started speaking with a kind of weird French accent. It was Joey Barton, I'm told. Marcus Rashford more recently in Spain as well. Certainly not the greatest of Joey Barton's crimes. But anyway, Leslie says, during the big stink in 1858, the temperature in the shade was 36 degrees. In the full sun, it was 48 degrees centigrade. And also says the EU is looking at resurrecting the Rwanda scheme. What do you think? Well, actually, it's a very, very good point, and it's probably something we should look into a bit more later on. I did see that story today. We'll have a chat about that, so stay tuned, Leslie. Jason in Luton says, does moving parts of the Westminster political machine up north mean the MPs can expense out for another property? Well, we'll see what happens. There's a big scandal today in maternity, and there's been a big report and inquiry about all of this. This is something that Candice knows an awful lot about. Candice, can you just take us through a little bit what's happened today, why it matters, why people need to know about it?
Yeah, so this is the latest iteration of just the maternity scandal that's been going on, maternity scandals that have been going on in British maternity care for years now. So this is Nottingham Healthcare Trust, so they've been investigating all these babies that have died, all these women that were injured whilst giving birth. But it's not unique and it's not singular. This has happened all over the country. So Dame Donna Ockenden, she's a very well-known midwife. She's been conducting all these inquiries. She'll do an inquiry, she'll reveal all these things that have gone wrong, but then it will happen again. And nothing improves and nothing
Well, we keep hearing
gets
lessons
better.
will be learned and they just often aren't.
It can't, because, OK, so I've had 3 children and I've been through maternity care 3 times. Each time it was chronically understaffed. Each time there was one anaesthetist for something like 30 women giving birth, just like running between women. Afterwards, they told me that there is no one. Like, they take away all the doctors, they take away all the nurses from maternity care and put them in other departments around the NHS. So, I mean, it's completely deprived and starved of resources.
And is this the case right across the country? I know it was where you were, but is this...
Across the country,
okay,
yeah. It's a big problem. It's like with psychiatry as well. Psychiatry is another Cinderella service that just suffers terribly, that is really put, like, very low down on priorities.
I mean, how are we in a situation where we give so much money to the NHS?
Yes.
It's gone up from 139 billion in England anyway, from 139 billion when the Tories came to power to something like, it's over 200 billion now. And, I mean, that's a huge amount of money. It's a huge amount of taxation that we're giving, and still there don't appear to be basic services.
No, I mean, it really is third world, and I don't say that lightly. I mean, people I know from other countries have been shocked at just how bad it's been in maternity care. Everyone I know has a nightmare story. I mean, I had quite a bad story, so it was with my firstborn child. I didn't get any pain relief because the anaesthetist was too busy and my labour progressed.
Crazy.
So it was the most agonising pain like I've ever experienced in my life, and it was not progressing. So they had to rush me into the emergency surgery ward and prepped me for a C-section. So I was paralysed from the chest down, but I was able to give birth naturally. So anyway, I'm completely paralysed. I have a newborn baby to look after. It's 4 a.m. in the morning. My husband got sent home because he had the flu, and they were like, no, you can't be around a newborn baby. Like, you just can't do that. So I'm on my own. I can't move, like I can't actually sit up like this. And he's screaming in his cot, like screaming. So I called the nurse to come and help. She comes in, she's like, that's not my problem, that's your baby. And she wouldn't help me until eventually I said to her, I can't move, I'm paralyzed. And then she was like, oh yeah, you had a C-section. I said, no, I did not have a C-section. She hadn't read the notes, she was not well informed, she was really nasty to me. I had to push her to help me dress and help my screaming baby. I thought it was just me that went through it. Turns out the MP, Theo Clark, the Conservative MP, had been through the exact same thing. She'd had an even more traumatic birth, like even worse. She'd called a nurse to come and help her. The woman had stuck her head around the door and said, not my baby, not my problem, and walked out. It's just common. It's rife. I think there's also...
I mean, why would someone with that attitude as well, with that really horrible... I mean, she was horrible to you.
Horrible.
And Theo Clark, I don't think Theo Clark's an MP anymore, but she was certainly a Conservative MP.
Yeah.
You know, why would someone lacking any compassion towards a new mother, for goodness sake, want to work even in that job? Very strange.
Yes, I think there is like some kind of misogyny going on, and believe me, women can internalise misogyny as well. You know, they can look at you. They look at you as needy. And not doing what you're supposed to be doing.
I mean, you're needy when you've had a child.
Yes.
You know, of course, and rightly so.
But they begin to resent you.
Right.
They begin to resent you.
So, what, in terms of this report today, do you think anything's going to change?
No, I honestly think, and this is a lot of people will disagree with me on this, but you need to start being able to pay for maternity care. Because if the NHS cannot put the funding in to get the anaesthetist, to get the nurses, to get the people, let us pay for it, and then we can have what we need. Because at the moment, you can't do health insurance for giving birth. You have to pay using cash, and it's just too much money. No one can afford to do that.
Well, so it would be a huge, I mean, it would be tens of thousands,
no,
wouldn't
it'd be insane. Like, it's just out of the question for most people.
Of course.
And fine, and then people who, for instance, who are reliant on state healthcare, then they won't have to compete with so many other women.
Kai, what do you make of the real crisis in maternity care, which has been identified here again?
What makes this story in particular so tragic is obviously that is a point where, as we've just talked about, mothers need the most care that they probably will ever have until they're in their older years. And those kids, I mean, it's just harrowing, the stories that have come out of this review. But the other thing that strikes me is some of the things that have been highlighted in the review. You know, a fear of speaking out, a compounding harm as a result of that, organisational denial, and then people being blocked in their efforts to campaign to uncover the truth. You could copy and paste that into so many different parts of the British state, and it would sit perfectly and make perfect sense, because this is sort of what happens when you have a degree of state failure across what is sprawling institutions, and that's what makes these sort of crises so difficult to solve, because actually if you don't even know where to look, where to point and shoot and solve problems, then where do you even start?
What would you say about privatisation, though, like my solution? Would you say no to that on the NHS? Like, you'd be quite opposed to that?
I don't think we should be opposed on an ideological basis. I think we should... I think where I was getting at with Burnham-ism, as much as can be gleaned about it, is I think he's of that school that is willing to look at the facts and try and get to an evidence-based decision either way and not be too ideologically driven about something. So to have those biases or those sacred cows that the left does really well with, that says, let's never, ever, ever, no, oh my God, any degree of privatisation is unacceptable. Well, that's not the reality we're living in, is it?
Speaking of inquiries, the grooming gangs inquiry is going to look at London, Oldham, Bradford and Keighley. We know that Rupert Lowe had his own inquiry, which is supported by various other people from various parties, including Nick Timothy of the Conservatives and Carla Lockhart of the DUP. We spoke to some people about that last week. Do you have faith in this inquiry in regard to rape gangs, Candice?
I mean, unless it can... Look, I'm very for finally having some accountability for the people working in the state who may have been complicit or enabled it. I mean, a lot of the victims have said that they believe that there were certain people who were very corrupt, who knew what was going on and turned a deliberate
Is it too late, though? Because so many of them will be retired or will have died or just won't face any level of scrutiny, Kai.
You need some.
Look, you're never going to hold people to account in terms of throwing them in jail, I don't think.
I think some should go to jail.
Well, you say should, but is that feasible? Look, this investigation investigation is looking to be so complicated already. But I think what this development made me think is actually the Labour Party is the only serious party about this issue, and they've taken a lot of flack.
Come on, hold on. They resisted it tooth and nail. They were dragged, kicking and screaming, into setting up this inquiry. They didn't want to do it. You had the deputy leader of the Labour Party who called it a dog whistle issue.
They got to the issue slowly, right? I agree with that. However, the reason they voted it down was it was a killer amendment that was put in by the opposition parties. So that's just basically designed to catch them out. They were doing it in their own way, which took some time.
It's still taking forever. I mean, all the time. Rupert Lewis has done his own inquiry in a much shorter time. He's completed it.
Come on, that was a nonsense. Rupert Lewis inquiry.
It wasn't a nonsense at all.
Sorry,
it identified many things that haven't been said publicly.
No, but to do an inquiry of this scale, of this magnitude properly, I think Rupert Lowe does a disservice to the issue by trying to pretend like he's done a comprehensive inquiry and that he's looked.
I think he'd be very angry to hear that. I think a lot of victims who spoke to him and gave their testimony would be quite angry about what you said there too, Kai. Candice.
But I actually do think these state apparatchiks who make these appalling decisions that lead to girls being raped en masse, that lead to children dying, there actually does need to be some accountability, because they retire on massive state pensions and nothing happens to them. And also, I would say that I do think that the Labour Party, I mean, most of the places where these happened, they were Labour constituencies. And when you had local whistleblowers like Anne Cryer, for instance, when she tried to talk about it, the party silenced her, because I think in many ways Labour can be a very politically correct party, and it will...
OK, let's let Kai respond to that. Do you agree?
There is a reckoning happening, and I agree that some Labour figures relied on, leaned too heavily on their lazy assumptions about this being dog whistle politics or people involved being racist for calling out what was plain to see. But that reckoning has happened. Now, you can disagree with how that came about, but the fact is, you say this is slow, but these plans all sat on some desks in departments until the Labour government really came in. The Tories sat on this for so long, those same Tories who now decry the Labour Party for doing nothing.
That's a very fair point, and they had Alexis Jay's report and nothing happened with that. But it also, I think, defies belief that Jess Phillips didn't say from day one that the Alexis Jay stuff should have been implemented. I think both the Tories and Labour and the Lib Dems as well, who were in government not too far away, not too long ago, I should say, do have questions to answer. Listen, Kai, thank you. Appreciate it. That's Kai Wilshaw, former Labour advisor. Candice Holdsworth as well, political commentator. Great to see you on the debate desk. We'll get you back soon. And I should say that we're speaking to Naraya Khan about the grooming gangs issue, rape gangs issue, a little bit later on in the programme. We're also going to speak to John Rentoul, who is the chief political commentator of The Independent, in just a few minutes too, about lots of other things. Thank you to Jim in Cambridge, who says, I'm sorry to say the best thing that comes out of Wales is the M4. Oh dear, Kai's not too happy about that. And Steve says, oh come on Peter, we all speak at least two languages. I speak good English and bad English, said Steve. So there we go. Some of us can barely speak English anyway. Maybe I'm one of them. Listen, thank you to everybody who's been in touch. Get your calls in and we'll come to them very soon. 0344 499 1000. So much to talk about this evening. A very busy programme between now and 10. Stay with us.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Just gone 8 o'clock. Thank you so much for your company this evening. There's a lot to talk about politically. A very dramatic Prime Minister's questions today. Kemi Badenoch tearing strips off Keir Starmer and Ed Miliband and Bridget Phillipson and others as well. Even Andy Burnham did not spare her bile, certainly. We will look into that a little bit. Also, there's a new Chief of Staff at Downing Street coming up. If Andy Burnham becomes Prime Minister, it looks pretty certain to me, to be honest, and that is James Purnell. He is the former Welfare Secretary, former Culture Secretary, worked at a big job at the BBC, was head of all radio, despite having never made a radio programme in his life. So we will talk about all of that with John Rentoul, who is the Chief Political Commentator at The Independent, in just a second. We'll also talk about the grooming gangs and how the inquiry will work and what it's going to do. We now know that it's going to focus on different areas, including London and Oldham, Keighley, Bradford as well. We'll find out how to keep your pets cool in the heat wave. That's something we talked about yesterday, but more on that today. And also, flying the English flag has come under scrutiny. The Liberal Democrats don't want it to happen in one area of Oxfordshire. The Reform UK have launched a petition when it comes to flying St George's Cross in London. I wonder what your views are on all of that. We're also talking about the maternity scandal and whatever else you want to talk about. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a WhatsApp text message or a WhatsApp voice note or give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. Stay with us here on Talk. So much to get through this evening between now and 10. Sort of making that sound as if it was an imposition, so much to get through, as if I'd had a heavy workload. I absolutely love this job and there's so many interesting things to talk about, and I hope you enjoy it at home. And please do text in, tweet in, let me know your thoughts on all the topics we're discussing, and we'll get to as many messages and calls as we can. And actually, when we're talking about the maternity scandal, which I think is one of those really important stories, Candace Holsworth, who was on the debate desk, just knows so much about it. Penny in Essex has been in touch and says, "Good evening, Peter. The NHS maternity scandal is appalling. It goes on and on, but what is even worse is that no one is ever held to account. I had my afterbirth left in, which resulted in me having a hysterectomy aged 33. It's awful," says Penny in Essex. Penny, I'm so sorry that you've gone through that. I mean, that is just grim, and certainly what Candace has gone through as well, really, really bad too. And if people want to tell me the stories, you're very, very welcome to do so. What's been your experience of maternity care as a dad or a mum? Do give me a shout, 0344 499 1000. It was a really interesting day politically today for a lot of reasons. A really interesting political week, actually. And I just want to go through a few bits of Prime Minister's questions today, because as you may know, every Wednesday at 12 o'clock when Prime Minister's Questions is on, I'm in the studio with Julia Hartley-Brewer going through it all and evaluating it all. And I can honestly say that today's was very different, actually. I think we're in a very different political era at the moment. I think how we do politics in this country has changed quite dramatically, even I would argue in the last 3 or 4 years, never mind the last 10, 15 years. So when it comes to Prime Minister's Questions, that's a very different affair. Kemi Badenoch is a very different political leader, of course, and she is someone who usually when someone stands down or there is a leader who goes or whatever, you get their opponents coming out saying, "Oh, well, we disagree politically, but, you know, a life of public service is what that person did, and, you know, they're actually a very conscientious human being, blah, blah, blah." Harriet Harman, actually, when she was acting Labour leader and then she was her last Prime Minister's Questions, I remember David Cameron being very effusive and saying, you know, the Honourable Lady is someone who, Right Honourable Lady is someone who, you know, deeply cares about public service, blah, blah, blah. And she said, "Well, you know, I almost feel as if I should be wearing a hoodie because he's given me such a big hug," which was a reasonably good joke at the time because of the hug a hoodie remarks on Cameron. But today, actually, we saw Kemi Badenoch still as angry and annoyed, I think, as she was on Monday, when she said that Keir Starmer simply wasn't a good Prime Minister, and actually that his replacement, successor, whatever, Andy Burnham, wouldn't be much better. Let's just remind ourselves about what Kemi Badenoch said about Keir Starmer and then about Andy Burnham.
He has been let down by an energy secretary who is killing industry, let down by a chancellor who is killing jobs, let down by backbenchers who don't understand that government is about tough choices. He U-turned again and again and again to appease them, and now they've abandoned him. And what for? A pair of eyelashes and a black T-shirt.
And that is how she described Andy Burnham. Also, interestingly, on the Labour leadership election today, well, there doesn't appear to be a leadership, it appears to be a coronation of Andy Burnham. But Al Cairns is really the only person still standing, still left, who is still talking about running. We know that Darren Jones won't be Prime Minister, which is obviously a deeply upsetting thing that I'm just going to have to take a day at a time. But Al Cairns, who was on the show last week, actually, the Armed Forces Minister who resigned, well, this is what he had to say to Channel 4 News today about whether he will run against Andy Burnham, or at least attempt to.
Are you seriously considering a run still?
Yeah, I think this is probably the most serious decision and discussion that we need to have. We have 3 years left of a Labour government. We've got to get this right. So I don't think there's anything more serious than this. And it's to make sure that we have the right policy platform as we step off. And that's primarily to defeat Reform Conservative coalition in 2029.
You need 81 backers. Are you anywhere near that?
So I'm not going to talk about numbers. It'll be down to the PLP, the Labour Party MPs, to decide. There are large chunks of different groups across the Labour Party that want to have this discussion. I think there'll be hustings in due course, I've heard, which is good, so we'll be able to put those policy ideas before. I'd be really clear. If the policy platform described by Andy Burnham or anyone else is solid, productive, courageous and bold, then I will jump on that bandwagon and move as hard and fast as we can to 2029 to get this country moving on the right track.
What is it about what Andy Burnham has said so far that you're not quite sure about?
Well, I actually agree. If you just step back and have a look what he's achieved, he's done a fantastic job in Makerfield. He's done a really good job in Manchester. He won by 20 points in Makerfield on a constituency that was in Reform previously. That's demonstrated real leadership and that the country wants something different. I think that's fantastic. So I agree with almost everything he said, but I'd like to see the policy plan as we move forward.
Al Cairns there speaking to Channel 4 News. Well, John Rentoul is the chief political commentator at The Independent. John, you're very welcome to the programme. Thanks for joining us. Let's deal with the Al Cairns aspect first. Has he got a snowball's chance?
I don't think so, Peter. He doesn't. I mean, it doesn't strike me that there's any obvious grouping that's going to give him 81 nominations.
Does he just want to be Defence Secretary, do you think? Is he once again, for the former Colonel of the Special Boat Service, on manoeuvres?
Well, I mean, the thing is, John Healey would probably quite like to be Defence Secretary again.
Or Chancellor, maybe.
Or Chancellor. But, if he was going to be Chancellor, then the same implication for defence spending would apply. Because you can't have John Healey as Chancellor unless you're prepared to spend 3% of national income on defence. And Andy Burnham says he wants to spend more on defence, but I'm not sure he wants to go as far as spending 3% of national income by 2030, which is quite a steep increase.
Yeah. On Prime Minister's questions today, I just want to go through 3 clips, actually, that I think illustrate quite a lot of what Kemi Badenoch's style today. 2 of them are from Kemi Badenoch and 1 of them is from the Speaker. And the first one is Kemi Badenoch talking about Keir Starmer, and she essentially said, if everything is fine, why have they stabbed him in the back, metaphorically, obviously. Let's just have a look at this clip. And she was also referring to Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary.
Hands up if you think the Education Secretary is doing a good job. Even she doesn't think she's doing a good job, Mr. Speaker. Even she doesn't think she's doing a good job. Someone did. Just for those who raised their hands, the 2 people who raised their hands, yesterday a poll found that 0% of teachers think the Education Secretary is doing a good job. 0%. She taxed private schools to pay for more teachers, but the number of teachers has gone down. It turns out appointing a spiteful class warrior as Education Secretary was a disaster.
And when it came to talking about the Prime Minister as well, Kemi Badenoch had quite a lot to say.
I'm so proud that she is sitting there, and so should everybody in this country who cares about social mobility. Knows that for poor children, education is absolutely vital, and that is why it drives every single priority and value that she has. I would have thought the party opposite would recognise and understand some of that, but they've fallen so low they don't.
The fact is that if she knew so much about poor children, she wouldn't have given them fewer teachers. Teacher numbers have gone down. Teacher numbers have gone down. It's amazing. I've never seen this much excitement on the Labour benches. Yes, cheering so loudly while there are 400 knives stuck in his back. Shame on them. Shame on them. They don't like it up them, but they know that what I'm saying is true.
Kemi Badenoch there was, we think anyway, reprimanded by the Speaker of the House of Commons, Sir Lindsay Hoyle. Now, he could have taken issue with a number of things she said, but in theory, but I think it's a reasonable guess that they don't like it up them remark was something that he wasn't too happy about. But a lot of her language and a lot of what she said, some people say, you know, this is Kemi Badenoch at her best. She's holding the government to account. She's attacking them. That's her job. She is the leader of the opposition. Should her language have been tempered? We'll talk about that in a second, but let's just hear what Sir Lindsay Hoyle said.
Sorry, Prime Minister. Can I just say, let us think about the language we're using. I think that'll be the first to leave, please. Can I just say, think about the language we're using, because when we leave this chamber, don't be surprised when constituents feel they can use the same language against each other. Let us show a little bit more decorum and respect to each other. Prime Minister.
John, what do you think of all that?
I thought it was interesting that the Speaker intervened, and you're quite right. It wasn't clear what he was objecting to. I thought it was the 400 knives in Keir Starmer's back. I think that sort of metaphor of political assassination, it does jar slightly in a House of Commons which has those plaques to Joe Cox and David Amos.
But I mean, stabbing someone in the back is a well-known phrase.
I know.
You know, Julius Caesar and all the rest of it. I mean, it's something that people say all the time. They don't mean someone. You know, it's a metaphor, isn't it?
Yes,
it's a turn of phrase.
But the Speaker didn't like it, and.
Yep.
I thought he's perfectly entitled to suggest that MPs should talk to each other with respect and decorum, because I thought Kemi Badenoch today was terrific in the sense that she is so direct, so confident, and so clear. But she's not quite got the sort of the subtleties that I think you need to be to be a supreme parliamentary performer.
Does she need to be subtle when most people will? I mean, I'm not talking about my viewers and listeners. They're very much aware of politics and what goes on, but a lot of people will only hear a little bit of that, a little snippet of that, maybe on the news tonight, maybe on a 90-second radio bulletin. You know, the vast majority of people won't have watched the whole thing, or even as much as we've shown in the last few minutes. Yeah. So, is there room for subtlety?
Well, yeah, no, but the point you made, Peter, at the start was that you'd expect Kemi Badenoch, after Keir Starmer, the first time they've had the chance to face each other since Keir Starmer's announced his resignation, you'd expect her to say something.
Well, things are so different now, John, aren't they?
Well, no, but I think she would appear even more impressive and stronger if she was prepared to say something nice about Keir Starmer personally. I mean, she could say. I mean, it would have fitted perfectly with her argument, which actually I thought was a terrific argument, which is that the problem that Keir Starmer had was not just that several ministers let him down, and she was very funny in dealing with them all. The Chancellor and the Ed Miliband and I mean Bridget Phillipson we'll come to in a minute. But her central point was that the mass of Labour MPs would not let him do what he wanted to do, which was to restrain the increase in disability benefits. And so the problem is the Labour Party. So she could have said, he's a very nice chap. I'm sure he means well. I'm very sorry to see him go, but his party is dreadful.
Yeah, and that would be one way to do it, certainly. But give us your thoughts on the Bridget Phillipson comments.
Well, I thought the word spiteful was unnecessary. I mean, it was just, it was over the top. I mean, she's got a very strong argument. I mean, I do think that there is a very strong element of class war about VAT on school fees. But I think you can say that without accusing your opponent of being spiteful, because that implies that you have some kind of insight into their motive, and that she's actually an evil human being. I mean, I thought Bridget Phillipson and Liz Kendall, who challenged Kemi Badenoch on the way out, were absolutely justified in doing so.
I've known Bridget Phillipson for nearly 25 years. I fundamentally disagree with her on basically everything. She's not an evil person, and she is not a bad person.
Exactly.
I would do things very differently if I happened to be Education Secretary. That doesn't mean that I don't think she's well-intentioned. I don't think she's spiteful, and I agree with you that went too far. But maybe that's personal judgment clouding it. I don't know.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think it's a much stronger attack if you acknowledge that your opponent is a decent person trying their best, and yet they still manage to screw it up.
Let's talk a bit about noise, because on Monday, as Keir Starmer was attempting anyway to give us his resignation speech, and this happens all the time, there was a lot of noise from music, which happened to be Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, which is a beautiful piece of music, but it also happens to have been sullied by the fact that it's the European Union's national anthem. Let's just see what happened on Monday.
Ripping out the poison of anti-Semitism, restoring trust on the economy, defence and national security, and becoming a party that once again stood proudly with, not against, our national flag.
So you get a sense there. I mean, he's making the speech, and you have this ghastly man called Steve Bray, who is the Stop Brexit man. He wears a series of silly hats. I mean, I remember when I was in politics 10 years ago, that every 6 o'clock every day we'd be sitting in Parliament having a meeting, and he'd shout, "Stop Brexit!" And listen, he's entitled to protest, but he's just not a nice person, I'm afraid. And when these things happen, he and his band
He's a Liberal Democrat, Peter.
Sorry?
He's a Liberal Democrat.
Is he? Well, there we are. No one's perfect. We all have our crosses to bear. We all make mistakes. I mean, now Kemi Badenoch has written to Sir Mark Rowley, who is the Metropolitan Police Chief, to say that you no doubt heard, as we all did, the resignation speech of the Prime Minister being drowned out by the racket emanating from serial protester Steve Bray's speakers. Mr Bray's aggressive style of protest, his persistent use of amplified noise equipment routinely on Wednesdays and at significant national events is antisocial, a nuisance and a national embarrassment. What does it say about the kind of country you are, even if the Prime Minister is not allowed to have a dignified moment when resigning? And she's talked about various bits of legislation and so on, and the fact that Mr Bray was found not guilty of an offence due to his human rights previously. Mr Bray has continued his antisocial campaign that shames our democracy. Kemi Badenoch says, does she have a point?
Oh, yeah, of course she has a point. I mean, but actually there's a counterpoint, which I'm also sympathetic to, which is that Steve Bray, what it says about our country is that we have a robust, slightly chaotic democracy where people are entitled to express themselves. And Steve Bray is intensely annoying. I mean, I know because my room in the House of Commons overlooks him, and we get his music all the time. And there are several journalists who share my office who've applied to Westminster City Council and to the police, and they've tried everything to try and shut him up. And no success so far. I mean, Kemi Badenoch in that letter says that the police should have appealed against that magistrate's ruling, because the magistrate ruled on human rights ground that he had the right to free expression. But I'm completely torn. I mean, he played silly music when Boris Johnson resigned.
And Rishi Sunak, and when the budget's there, he's always playing money, 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 and he has all these different sort of adaptions, versions of different songs and so on. I mean, it's definitely annoying. There's no doubt about that, especially when you're trying to report. When I'm maybe trying to talk to Julia or whoever when I'm on Downing Street, and you can't hear yourself think because that's happening. The other option, actually, is if Keir Starmer just did it inside. I mean, what did they pay? 9 million quid for that press room, which they barely use? It could be done there, and certainly Rishi Sunak, rather than getting totally soaked, could have done the thing inside as well when he was calling the election.
Yeah. I mean, it's you don't have to do it out in the street. It's just because that's the that's where it's always been done, and that's where people expect to see it being done.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, I do expect, I do wish the police would show a bit more gumption. I mean, they could just cart him off for a bit just to just to amuse themselves, I would have thought.
Well, indeed. Sometimes what happens when people are doing protests they don't like is that they arrest them and then de-arrest them and just sort of put them in a cell for a minute or two. I mean, I'm not sure I'm going to encourage that happening because I do believe in the freedom to protest, but I do think that Steve Bray does extract the Michael a little bit on that. John, thank you. John Rentoul there, Chief Political Commentator at The Independent. Mike in Lincoln says, with regards to the education of our children, I think the Labour Party mistake indoctrination for education. They, under Bridget Phillipson, have ceased educating and moved into a Ministry of Education being the Ministry of Information, a la 1984. When the next global rankings come out, even though I'm not a betting man, I'd wager we'll have tumbled down the rankings, says Mike. Now, I don't think that the Education Department has become like 1984. I mean, I think that's maybe a bit far, Mike, but very happy to read out your opinion. Alison in St Albans says, please ask John Rentoul whether it was subtle and decorous, let alone respectful of the House, for the new SNP MP to cross her fingers when swearing allegiance to the Crown. Why did the Speaker not criticise? That's a good point. John's gone now, but I should have asked him that. Ernie says, I've just heard Starmer's going on a stepping down world tour. I hope he's paying for it himself. We're skint. We've always also given him millions of air miles since he took office, and I don't know about a world tour. He should have left by the back door with a coat over his head, says Ernie. Betty says the evil Peter Mandelson is behind all of this. Karen's just looking for a Defence Secretary job with a few billion more. I'm sure Peter Mandelson would deny being evil. Badenoch sound, although I was accused last night of being the Antichrist, or Antichrist anyway, by Ken. I would deny being the Antichrist. Of course I would. Al Carn says, Rob, what a waffler, no facts, just piffle, a typical Labour MP. Burnham didn't win off Reform, he won off Labour. So thank you to Rob for that. And great show with Candice and Kai, says this texter. Kai was doing a fantastic job of giving Labour supporters a reasonable face, and then came his answer about Labour leading over the grooming gangs issue, and it all crashed down around his ears. I found that absurd from Kai. I do like Kai, but I mean, that was absurd. Candice says this texter was her usual airlight self, and you didn't have to do much mediating until the grooming gangs inquiry came up. Thanks for covering so many issues. We do cover loads of issues, and thank you for that. I appreciate that, texter. Just to say that we will take calls after the break, and if you want to get your call on the air, please do give me a ring. Pick up the phone, 0344 499 1000. Stay with us here on Talk.
We've got some breaking news that has just come in. talkSPORT have announced a brand new partnership in a developing story. We hear they've created So Good Lager right in time for football's big summer. Just in, we're hearing that So Good Lager will be pouring pints across all O'Neill's pubs and some of the best sports pubs across the UK. With the big kickoff just around the corner, you can find out where to get your hands on a fresh pint of So Good Lager at talksport.com/lager.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Marie in Maidstone has messaged me to say, great show as always, thank you Marie. With regard to Kimmy Badenoch getting her knuckles rapped by the Speaker, I found it interesting that in part of this particular point she also called Labour traitors. I know it's a different matter, but I'm just thinking about Mark Francois and his anger over the use of calling the Tories traitors, says Marie in Maidstone. That's really interesting actually, and we did have that discussion with Mark Francois around this time actually last night, where he said he'd never work with Reform UK because the Yousaf had called the Conservatives and indeed Labour traitors. Now we did read out a statement from Reform UK and we invited Mr Yousaf on the programme to respond. He hasn't responded to that invitation, but he's welcome anytime if he wants to do so. He's welcome anytime in this programme. He's an interesting person and an influential person to speak to. Thank you to the texter who says Badenoch sounds as if she's having a childish debate at school. I'm sick of listening to this garbage. Left and right, not one of them have the quality or conviction. They're absolutely useless and the country knows it. Betty says, my sister-in-law had a horrific time in the NHS first time, cash in Harley Street the next time. The boy was born abroad in a second world country and it was amazing, like the Savoy Hotel. And actually on this maternity story, a big inquiry out today saying that there are just so many failings. Peter in from Tem in Oxfordshire has been in touch, and it was a while ago that your story happened, but of course it will have a huge impact even to this day. Peter, just tell us what happened.
Yes, well, we have to go back 53 years. And my view of the NHS is that it is a dictatorship with no competition at all, a take-it-or-leave-it dictatorship. My wife was pregnant 53 years ago. I came home from work one day and I found her upstairs crying on the bed. She said she'd been to the hospital and they told her, and it was a Friday, that she would have to come into the hospital and have it induced, the child. I said this was nonsense. I rang the hospital and I got nothing but a load of lies. And I said that this child is not to be induced unless, without permission from either the mother or the father. When I went into the hospital in the evening, I found she was strung up like a chicken. They had induced the child without permission. It was a disaster. She left the hospital and she was walking like a crab. I couldn't understand what was wrong and she didn't understand. She went straight to bed. The next day, I went into the bedroom. I smelt. There was an infection. I could smell it. I rang the GP. The GP refused to come out and sent an incompetent nurse. She didn't examine her. I told her, I said, there's an infection here. I was very, very fortunate in that I had a whole mass of broad-spectrum antibiotics. So I started feeding them to her. I rang the doctor again. He didn't want to come. So I said, well, if you don't come, I'm going to report you to the General Medical Council. He came. He was totally and utterly incompetent. He didn't examine her. He said there was nothing wrong, although I said there was an infection. For 4 weeks, I was feeding her antibiotics. I couldn't understand what was wrong. I came home from work one day and I found her in the kitchen. I said, my goodness me, you're up. Yes, she said. And she put her hands out in front of me and she had a whole lot of swabs in her hand. So I wrote to the hospital. I got no apology from the hospital. So I told my wife, I said, you go and see a solicitor. So she went to see a solicitor, and the solicitor said, well, you've already been to university. You're obviously an intelligent woman. I'll just give you advice behind. He said, don't get a second opinion from doctors in this area because they all stick together. She got a second opinion, and of course they didn't have a leg to stand on. And the next 4 months was a matter of negotiating damages. And at the end of it, she said, I'm quite interested in this. I quite like litigation. I would like to be a lawyer. So she wrote to the Law Society, and the Law Society granted her an interview, and they said you'd be most suitable. You don't have to go back to university. You can do it by distance learning. And in a period of 5 years, we had our second daughter born at home, undiagnosed twins, born at home, and she passed all the Law Society exams. She was a very remarkable person, and she then spent, apart from 12 years teaching French, she did 30 years as a lawyer. My argument is that the NHS should be disbanded as it is, and it should be only for those people who can prove that they have no funds at all and incapable of earning a living.
Can I ask you, Peter, you are someone who, if this happened 53 years ago, I think it's reasonable to assume that you're in later life, perhaps, a little bit older.
Well, a great tragedy happened to me last year. I lost my wife.
I'm so sorry to hear that, Peter.
It's been a great trauma for me.
Of course, I'm sure. Well, you've paid fantastic...
Can I just say that I read recently that £1.3 billion of taxpayers' money was passed out last year in compensation to women who had been to hospital to have children.
Can I just ask you, Peter, just before you go, and you've paid, can I just say, you've paid a really moving and heartfelt and fantastic tribute to the remarkable woman your wife was in in the story you have told us. So thank you for that. Just before you go, Peter, I just wonder, as someone who is a bit later on in years, if you need NHS help now, do you have any confidence in the health service given the horrendous trauma that you went through back then?
Well, I keep away from doctors. I believe you're from Northern Ireland.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, my wife went to BRA.
Okay, great school in Belfast. Yes,
indeed. And I know the headmistress of BRA very well.
Okay.
And she went to Queen's, and she studied French there, and she also studied Italian.
My goodness.
She was fluent.
Very smart woman. Well, Peter,
fluent in Italian and French.
Goodness me. Well, Peter, you've painted quite a picture of a very determined woman who went through horrible things, as did you, Peter. And thank you for that. What a really interesting call, and thank you for your opinion and also for your experience as well. And I'm sorry to hear that happened to you, and I wish you very, very well, Peter. Thank you for that. Ruth says, about the baby inquiry, I must say I had a 15-week early baby in Nottingham City. We spent 9 months in the NU ward, I think that's neonatal ward, and they were brilliant. I know a lot of people wouldn't agree with me, but there are some good people there, and I hope that people who lost their babies find some peace, says Ruth. Regarding loud music during Starmer's speech, there is a time and a place, and that was neither the time nor the place, says Amanda. And one more before the break from Nellie, who says, in regards to Sir Lindsay Hoyle, what about the way they speak about the electorate, calling those who disagree with the views far-right thugs and racists? It works both ways. They need to respect everyone, as they have given the green light to people to attack others verbally without consequence. Starmer was getting a bit of his own medicine from Kemi today. Great show as always, says Nellie. Loads of really interesting views coming in. Keep them coming. 0344 499 worth 1000. We're going to talk about this rape gangs inquiry in just a second. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Bit of breaking news, and that is that a man has been found dead at a Bronze Age stone circle in the Peak District during the summer solstice event. He has been named by Derbyshire Police as Isaac Clare Watts, 26 years old, from Nottingham. A 41-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder in connection with the incident and remains in custody. Derbyshire Police say they were called to reports of a man's body being found at 9 Ladies Stone Circle in Stanton Lees at 1:38 p.m. on Monday. That is, a man found dead at a Bronze Age stone circle in the Peak District has been named named by Derbyshire Police as Isaac Clare Watts, and a 41-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder. He is in custody. If there's any update on that between now and 10, we will of course tell you. Thanks to Fiona, who says all these reports on NHS services are unacceptable. Why is it NHS staff are never held responsible? Is anyone looking at the levels of medical expertise we're filling our NHS with? Diversity is clearly not a strength when services that we once excelled in are just not working. Stop this DEI nonsense and all will improve. Dave in Kingston as well has a view on our next story. He says the Labour inquiry into rape gangs will be a whitewash in true Yes Minister style. Nobody gets punished, jailed or loses their pension. They make it so complex and complicated that everyone walks away scot-free. Kai, who was on the debate desk a little bit earlier on, said it had to be complex, it has to be difficult. That's a lie. Rupert Lowe has just proven it's easy. Anyone who handled the document, statement or witness and came across the words child prostitute needs to go to prison. Those two words are a legal impossibility. Anyone in authority who saw them is complicit, culpable and should rot in jail, says Dave in Kingston. Well, now we know actually that inquiry, at least we know where it's going to actually concentrate. London, Oldham, Bradford and Keighley named as the first focus of the grooming gangs inquiry. Nuria Khan is a broadcaster and podcast host and joins me now. Nuria, what do you make of this? Now we finally have a little bit of movement on all of this. We spoke last week about Rupert Lowe's inquiry, and I just wonder whether you've any hope that this statutory inquiry, the government ordered inquiry, will actually do its job.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, Peter. Well, we did mention the Rupert Lowe inquiry. Obviously, in my opinion, it cut to the heart of the matter in a way that I don't think any national inquiry will, in terms of really relating Islamic doctrine and religious motivations, as well as racial motivations behind the actual scale of the abuse. But it's very interesting, I think, to see that obviously, finally, Oldham's being brought into the mix, as is Bradford, Keighley and London. People have been obviously campaigning for years to have Oldham looked into, and it was denied time and time again for any level of statutory inquiry to consider Oldham. In that sense, they were just relying on local inquiries. And same with Bradford. I think it's highly politically sensitive because there was such a fear around potentially the scale of abuse that took place in Bradford could almost rival Rotherham or put Rotherham to shame even. And so again, it was that topic was evaded for years, and it's just after so much campaigning done by victim survivors and local MPs, and even the councils having, the Bradford Council itself refused to hold inquiries. So this is going to actually force its hand, which I think is very, very welcome. And London, again, arguably it's the most interesting addition as well, because usually when you think of these rape gang scandals, you confine them to northern towns, whereas this actually brings it back to a potential national scandal that has London at the heart of it.
And what do you think? What do you think of that as in its nature? I mean, now it's a national inquiry, and I think that's probably a good thing. But I remember speaking to one of the KCs who did one of the local inquiries, and he said actually, if you have a national inquiry, it makes it obviously a huge, big issue, as it should be something that we absolutely look into. But if you want to get to the heart of the issue when it comes to local factors, sometimes local inquiries where you can actually perhaps go into someone's front room and just have a chat with them about the horrendous thing they have been through, and the local factors within that can be more instructive. But I mean, that's been done in some respects, but do you think a national inquiry that concentrates on these areas will actually get to the bigger issues and more kind of systematic issues?
I'm hoping that because it's got the statutory powers behind it, it's going to make more of a difference, obviously. So, you know, people will be compelled to give evidence and witness testimony. And also, Peter, it takes away from local councils, essentially, and local police forces marking their own homework. Yeah. Which we're done with. We need third-party scrutiny, and we need all the findings from the Casey report to be applied to the nationwide scrutiny that we're going to see hopefully take place. I mean, all the promises are there. They're saying the right things. They're paying lip service in terms of we will look into ethnicity and cultural, religious motivations. We're not going to split the inquiry, as was the issue before when some of the victim survivors walked away when Jess Phillips was supposed to lead it because they wanted to focus on child sexual exploitation in general, as opposed to focusing on specific gang-based child sexual exploitation, which this was. So they're saying all the right things, but time will tell if they actually cut to the heart of the matter and incorporate everything that needs to be added to it on a local level.
It's interesting that we have probably a new Prime Minister very soon, someone who knows the north of England far better than his predecessor, probably, Keir Starmer. And with the London aspect of this, we've had Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, Sir Sadiq, often say that he didn't believe that it wasn't really, he didn't believe that it was a particularly big problem in London. I mean, in your experience and in your view, is this something that is going on all over the place? We had Rupert Lowe last week talking about, you know, a quarter of council areas had a real problem with these rape gangs.
I have no doubt about it, Peter. As I said, I work in the violence against women and girls sectors, and even some of the individual standalone cases that come to us, we need to step back and we actually contact the police because we have indications that there's a wider network at play. And once again, the victim survivors we're dealing with in those cases are usually vulnerable girls from a white working class backgrounds. And this is within London I'm talking about because I work in the pan-London area. And Sadiq Khan, obviously, this is also why I think religious implications need to be considered, regardless of, you know, how he presents. At the end of the day, he is a Muslim, and there is that doctrine, which I'm so grateful that Rupert Lowe's inquiry touches on. It's a doctrine of loyalty and disavowal within Islam, and your first and foremost loyalty is to the Muslims and the Islamic community, and you are meant to shield the crimes of fellow Muslims. So what did we see when Sadiq Khan, when he was challenged about the grooming gangs or even asked, he tried to say, what does that even mean? What do you mean by a grooming gang?
Do you think that was because of his religious faith?
I mean, I'm not going to speculate on his level of religiosity and how much he connects with Islam in general, but I will say that there is a doctrine in Islam where you are supposed to shield Muslim crimes of fellow Muslims, especially if they cause embarrassment to the faith.
Okay, I'm sure Sadiq Khan would deny being influenced by that, but really interesting. And certainly you talk about those vulnerable women that you work with. We know that the care sector is an area where there's so many young women, young girls in care who have been raped, who have been and are still being horrendously treated. Just finally, Nuria, I mean, do you think this inquiry will really properly, you talked about the issues there in regard to the Muslim faith, do you think that this inquiry is going to get into that bit and is actually going to go, maybe not as far as how Rupert Lowe went in his report last week, which was frankly pretty far. I'm not saying, you know, good, bad, and different. I thought he was just very, very direct. I cannot see this inquiry going into that level and really taking this head on, because I know what so much political correctness in this country is like and is about. I just wonder, from your perspective as someone who knows this sector, who knows how this has actually been, what your level of confidence on that particular issue is as an ex-Muslim yourself.
Yes, as I mentioned last time, Peter, I'm with you. I don't think the National Inquiry is going to get as deep into the heart of the matter and kind of tie specific doctrines of Islam to the abuse that we've seen. But where I do think we are getting somewhere, only obviously because of all the pressure that's forced onto the government at this level, where it's getting more embarrassing now to not look into the issue than it is to deny the issue. So on top of initially the J report, then the Casey report, and now what Rupert Lowe has done, we have forced we've forced the pendulum, if you will, to kind of at least confront the fact that there is a certain demographic overly represented, and they are Pakistani majority in these places, and that's what Keighley is going to show us as well. Bradford is going to show us the same exact thing, and I think Oldham will as well. But the point is that when it comes to the level that Islam played in this, they are going to tiptoe around that. The only good thing I would say that might come from this is they're taking the approach to talk to I've had rumors that they're going to talk to perpetrators as well, and to get their mindset and ask them about their motivations as to why they carried this out, to hint at potential religiously inspired motivations or racially inspired motivations, which is a plus.
Nuria, thank you. As always, Nuria Khan there. Really interesting to talk to her, broadcaster and podcast host. A fascinating perspective on all of this. Let's get another one from Steve in London, who's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Steve, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Good evening, Peter. First of all, I'd just like to say I doff my cap to that young lady to take the risk that she's taking with the section of the community that she's targeting. I think she's a very brave young lady.
I agree with that. I think Nuria is a really brave person and certainly makes a lot of sense as well. She's educated me in many ways. I've learned so much from her, Steve.
Me too, but I think a lot of people probably have. But it's nice to see somebody from that section of the community. Okay, she may not follow the faith anymore, but she obviously knows what she's talking about.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. What do you think, Steve?
Take it on board. I think basically, it's been going on that long now, Peter. People are going back 25, 30 years. You've only got to listen to Maggie Oliver for how far this goes back in her experience. However, I think this goes to the heart of government, without doubt. At some point in the last 25, 30 years, some father, some mother have got really irate, be it with the police, the health service, social services, whatever, and either gone to their MP, maybe written to the Home Office, or even written to the Prime Minister. They knew. Yeah. They have covered it up, and that's right across the political board, parties, Labour, Tory, Lib Dem.
And it is that bad, and it's almost worse as well, Steve, because there is willful ignorance. There is, don't tell me about that, don't want to know, it's under a rock somewhere, it doesn't matter to me, it doesn't affect my daily life, it's in the too difficult box. That is what so many in government, so many authorities, so many in the police, so many in the care services, so many people in power thought about this issue. They just thought, those girls, well, they're, we've heard the phrase white trash and those kind of horrible epithets that have been put on children being raped.
But the worst thing for me, I think, I may be wrong, but you'll correct me here, Peter, if I'm wrong, because your politics is a lot sharper than mine. I think it was Naz Saha, the MP, that stood up and told white girls to shut up for the sake of diversity.
I don't remember that particularly, Steve, but listen, thank you for your thoughts on it, and I appreciate your call, Steve. A lot. I think Naz Shah retweeted something I'm being told here about that, so certainly, Steve has a point there, and I know there are a lot of people in authority who really should think far more carefully about what they said and did in that regard. Lots of people getting in touch. Thank you to Steve, by the way, and I'll just read a couple of messages before the break. Penny says our local A&E had a man die on the floor of a heart attack. It's well known, it's been in the papers and the news. A nurse offered him paracetamol and told him not to be so dramatic. Patients asked a doctor if the man could have some privacy, only to be told don't look at him then. His son begged for help. We saw people sitting on the floor inside and out. We were there for 5 hours, and when we came out the same people were there. One man covered in blood hadn't been seen. A bad head injury. To go to A&E again, I would be truly terrified. Well, I remember my family went to A&E within the last, I think, year, 18 months. I forget the exact timing. I was sitting there for 19 hours. That is just too long. Neil says, I've no faith in the Welsh NHS. Nearly 3 years ago, my partner had a massive asthma attack. I was told by 999 ambulance it would take 6 to 7 hours for an ambulance, and put the phone down. Luckily, I rang back, and a quick response turned up in 10 minutes and told me my partner would have been dead in 20 minutes. I tried to complain, and a brick wall at every junction. Some news in the Telegraph. They're reporting tonight that Andy Burnham has cooled on the idea of Ed Miliband as his Chancellor, fearing a repeat of the Blair-Brown split if he appoints a favourite of the Labour left to the Treasury. And apparently sources close to Andy Burnham said he was keen to avoid conflict between Number 10 and the Treasury once he takes over in Downing Street next month. That's almost certain to happen. I had a few people criticising me, saying, why are you saying this is definitely going to happen? It's almost certainly going to happen. Allies have warned that Miliband would be a risky choice because of his support for expensive net zero policies and history of promoting a left-wing fiscal agenda. They said Burnham, who experienced the conflict between Blair and Brown, of course, when he was a junior health minister and a foreign office minister, was concerned about appointing a challenger with economic priorities different to his own. I also want to thank Alison in St Albans for a lovely message that I'm not going to read out, but I have taken a picture of it and will be WhatsApping it to my parents. So Alison, I won't read it out because my head will explode, but a very, very nice comment, as so many people are in their comments, and so many great comments coming in. 0344 499 1000. It is very hot. You will be aware of that, I would imagine, if you're in the southern part of the United Kingdom. It's pretty hot in other parts of the United Kingdom as well, let me tell you. And we will be getting some tips and some thoughts from the indefatigable animal rights activist Dominic Dyer, the animal welfare campaigner, on how to keep cats and pets more generally safe and happy in this week's unprecedented heatwave for a nation, and indeed I think a community when it comes to talk viewers and listeners of animal lovers, and Dominic will have some very good thoughts on this. Stay with us.
We've got some breaking news that has just come in. talkSPORT have announced a brand new partnership in a developing story. We hear they've created So Good Lager right in time for football's big summer. Just in, we're hearing that So Good Lager will be pouring pints across all O'Neill's pubs and some of the best sports pubs across the UK. With the big kickoff just around the corner, you can find out where to get your hands on a fresh pint of So Good Lager at talksport.com/lager.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
I've just been reading that Greggs has temporary closures. Just to let you know, the following shops will be temporarily closed on Wednesday the 24th and Thursday the 25th to protect our customers and colleagues during the severe hot weather. And then it gives a list of places like Luton, Trowbridge, Barnet, Wantage, Dudley, Northampton. We're sorry for the disruption. Rest assured there's plenty more Greggs nearby. Please use our shop finder to plan your visit. And there are just a lot of different ways in which people are, working from home or doing all sorts of things to try to avoid the heat. It is very warm where we are in London today. What's the temperature in London at the moment, actually? I think it's, when I came into work anyway, it was about 30 degrees. But one thing I am always cognizant of is that is my cat, Jack. He is one of the three main anchors in my life, along with my two best friends, Michael and Tasha. And Jack is, I worry about him, as do a lot of other people, about their dogs, cats and animals. And Dominic Dyer is with us now, the animal welfare campaigner. Animal welfare foremost in your mind at all times, Dominic, but particularly in this heat. No way any dog should be in a car at the moment at all in any of that heat. But tell us some more thoughts on what people should do, what they are doing. Dominic, good to have you on the programme.
Yeah, it is important, isn't it? Because obviously we're seeing lots of health warnings for people, and that's really important because there's some real dangers out there with regards to anyone in society at the moment in these hot conditions. It's hotter than Phuket in Thailand, and the humidity matches what you'd get in Phuket at the moment. So this is just not something we've experienced in Britain in any one of our lifetimes, really. It's not the same as 1976 either, because the humidity is far higher. And if you look at the scale of this heat dome, it crosses all over Europe, of course. So when it comes to pets, I think people are struggling to consider their own health, but also their animals. 13 million dogs, 12 million cats, huge numbers of animals. A few things that I think are really important. Start with dogs, because I think they are in many ways under more threat than any other companion animal we have. Real dangers of heat stroke. So while I'm on, I should just mention what the symptoms are and what to look out for. If it goes over 40 degrees or gets into that area of temperature, we're getting close to it, this is a big problem. Dogs can't sweat. They can have to only pant to sort of, release that heat in their bodies. If you get a situation where your dog is panting really heavily, if they've got very red gums, if they've got a very red tongue, lethargic, weakness, stumbling, vomiting, diarrhea, if they collapse, that dog has heat stroke. And if you don't get it for a medical treatment at a vet's very quickly, it can die of organ failure, blood loss, kidneys, and all the other problems that will be associated with that. And it comes on really, really quickly. So that's why I just wanted to mention that to people. In terms of what can you do to keep, the areas of your living room and the house that you're living in as cool as possible, we're all struggling with it. Fans, of course, portable air conditioning units, those mats that you can buy, cool mats, are really good to put down on beds to keep, cool areas where your dogs or your cats can lay upon. Getting dogs out, think about it. I said on Nick Ferrari yesterday that I was getting my dog out at 4 o'clock in the morning, and there are lots of people out there at that time, as the sun rises. It's humid and it's hot at that time now. And the dogs will really feel it even then. But if you're getting them out at 6 or 7, which seems completely reasonable in a normal situation, often it can be too hot.
Yeah, and the pavements can scorch their paws as well, can't they? Just talking about getting dogs and cats and animals out. If you have a cat that goes out during the, I have a cat flap and Jack goes out, lots of other people will have cats that go out. Should you keep them in? Is that something you should do?
Cats are generally better able to deal with the heat. They will find cool places and they will look after themselves, and they can manage the heat better than dogs. So they're not as at such a danger of heat exhaustion, but they still can have problems with it. Obviously, if you could keep your cat in cool conditions all day, fine. But if you were keeping it inside a flat and you were out working and it was scorching hot, that's not necessarily going to be good for the cat either.
Yep, sure.
It's being around the animal to look after it. I think that's the problem. I've said to a lot of people at the moment, for example, in London and other cities, they tend to have people come in and look after their dogs, and some probably cats to a degree, but potentially, particularly dogs, to walk them, actually take time off work and actually be at home so you can be with the dog. Don't leave it for a long period of the day. Make sure it is cool. Just be there, work through the day from home, but also look after your animal as well. I think that's really important. Also, rabbits and guinea pigs, if they're outside, in hutches, generally you would think they would be fine. But in these conditions, you've got to consider bringing those animals in so you can actually cool them down as well. Obviously, keep water wherever you are close to the animals so they've got access to water. And just think about, changing your routine. Don't get them out for long periods of time. Get them out at night. I'm tending to get my dog out about 10 o'clock at night and getting out at 4 in the morning. That's what I'm doing. It's the safest way of doing it. But I know it's a struggle. It's a real struggle in towns and cities where most of us live these days. And this is not going to be over probably until Sunday. So we're going to have 30 plus degrees with growing humidity. By the time we get to Friday, it's going to be unbearable. Most of our homes, as you know, are insulated for the winter.
Yeah,
not
indeed.
made for this. And there's a lot of discussion in society how we adapt our cities and homes, and we can all talk about the climate change stuff, which is terribly important. But we've actually got to live through this. This is going to happen to all of us, and this is just a wake up, I think, now.
Okay.
We've got to think about our pets as well.
Thank you, Dominic. Really good to talk to you. Dominic Dyer there, the animal welfare campaigner. Lots of good advice there, certainly, and I'll be home about 11 o'clock tonight, and I'll be opening all the windows to let the air circulate, certainly a bit when it's a little bit cooler. After the break, we're going to talk about a maternity scandal. Martin Gower, who's a former NHS Trust chairman, will be there. I want to hear from you as well. Let me know your thoughts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a Well, a very good evening. It's just gone 9 o'clock. I'm Peter Cardwell. This is the Evening Exchange on Talk, and I'd love to hear your views on all the big stories, including some breaking news from the Times newspaper. Bill Gates's Russian lover gained City Hall access through Jeffrey Epstein. This is the Microsoft founder who's admitted an affair with a Moscow official whom the paedophile financier helped connect with London mayoral staff under Boris Johnson. This is something that really will rock the news tomorrow. Certainly lots of people will be very surprised by it, although of course there's so much scandal around Jeffrey Epstein and the scandals just keep coming. Another scandal we're going to talk about is maternity, cruel care, toxic bullying at an NHS trust, systematic failures at Nottingham University Hospital's NHS trust contributing to serious harm or deaths in 520 cases. We'll speak to a former NHS Trust chairman in just a minute on that. Thank you to everybody who's been in touch. There's loads more to discuss this evening, including a flags row in Oxfordshire. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. Send me a voice note, send me a WhatsApp text message, or give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. So much to talk about between now and 10 o'clock, and plenty of time for calls, so do give me a shout here on Talk. Let me just go through this story in the Times. I mean, there's so much to this. Bill Gates's Russian lover gained City Hall access through Epstein. The Microsoft founder admitted an affair with a Moscow official whom the paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein helped connect with London mayoral staff under Boris Johnson, reports the Times. Bill Gates had an extramarital affair with a senior Moscow city official whom Jeffrey Epstein helped introduce to members of London's mayoral office while Boris Johnson was running the city. The billionaire Microsoft co-founder gave testimony to the United States House Oversight Committee as part of an investigation into Epstein, in which he revealed he had affairs with 2 Russian women. He named them as Karima Nigmatulina, who's a nuclear physicist, and Mila Antonova, who's a bridge player. He also admitted to a third affair with Alice Jacobs Nesselrott, a medical entrepreneur, during his lengthy testimony on the 10th of June. According to emails released this year as part of the Epstein files, Nigmatulina travelled to London in October 2012, shortly after, being appointed Deputy Director of Moscow City's Planning Office. A few weeks earlier, Jeffrey Epstein wrote to David Stern, his fixer, who also worked closely with Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, asking for him to arrange a meeting between Nigmatulina and officials within London's mayoral office. The meeting was apparently a favour to Boris Nikolok, who worked for Gates as his chief advisor for science and technology. There's all sorts of detail about that. I mean, there's so much, it's pretty complicated, but essentially this is rather disturbing news. Boris Johnson, at that time the Mayor of London, during a period in which closer ties with the Russian capital were being fostered, obviously a very, very different political atmosphere to things that are now. In December 2013, the Times approaches Johnson's then Chief of Staff, Edward Lister, he's now a member of the House of Lords, travelled to Russia to represent the London mayoral office at the Moscow Urban Forum, where Nigmatulina was one of the lead speakers. Kind of a complicated story, but nonetheless damning when it comes to Boris Johnson's City Hall, and this is something I'm sure we'll be talking about more tomorrow, but that is the headline, that Bill Gates's Russian lover gained City Hall access through Jeffrey Epstein, the Microsoft founder admitting an affair with a Moscow official whom the paedophile financier helped connect with London mayoral staff under Boris Johnson. Really, really shocking stuff, and just this scandal of Jeffrey Epstein goes on and on and on. Another big scandal that we're talking about today is about Nottingham University Hospital NHS Trust. Systematic failures there, we are told by a report by Donna Ockenden, finding that the trust itself contributed to serious harm or death in 520 cases. Well, Martin Gower is a former NHS Trust chairman, and there is clearly, Martin, a crisis in NHS maternity, particularly when it comes to the damning evidence that has been reported upon today. What do you think?
Well, Peter, thanks for having me on. I mean, my first reaction to this when I read the story was, here we go again. You know, over the last sort of 20 years, we've had Morecambe Bay, East Kent, Shrewsbury and Telford, and now Nottingham, and of course the question marks over the control and management of the unit in the Countess of Chester. So actually, it just is extraordinary. I mean, to to go into an NHS hospital and have a baby seems to be becoming a high risk activity, and these units, there is a cultural issue with them and with the organisations they're in, that things go wrong, that they're kind of covered up, and yet when I look at the level of mortalities that can be reported, I can't believe that the boards of those trusts that this has sort of passed them by unnoticed.
Because those boards, and you will know this as a former NHS trust chairman, I mean, your job as a board member is to probe that, is to say, why is this happening? Clearly there are errors, clearly there are problems, maybe even a culture, as there was in Nottingham. What can we do about this? I mean, you're it, really, aren't you, when it comes to probing what happens on a day-to-day logistical level and saying, how can we fix this? But that clearly failed to happen here.
I mean, structurally, Peter, what should happen, or what normally does happen, is that the trust board will have a subcommittee that looks particularly at health and safety. It's chaired by one of the non-executive directors, who are in the majority on the trust board, and they take deep dives into issues that appear to be a problem. Even if they subsequently result in not being that much of a problem, they are dug into. Deep dives are carried on at that level and actually at board level. And certainly in the trust that I chaired, we began to have at the beginning of every board meeting a patient story. A story of whether that was a good experience of a patient or their carer, or a not so good experience. Because
and do you feel you were ever shielded when you were on an NHS trust board? Do you think you were ever shielded from the realities, or did you want it warts and all? Because that's clearly not what this board had, and clearly it's taken this inquiry report to get all of that horrible detail, dreadful detail, shameful detail out into the public.
Well, one of the problems, Peter, is that in many trusts, and I suspect this is true in the majority of these, the actual relationship between the doctors, the medical community, and the management is not really very good. There's an aura of mistrust between them, and in many cases, the doctors very dismissive of the board, and on the other way, the board don't make enough of an effort to build an internal relationship with their medical staff. I am happy that in the 6 years that I spent at the last trust before I finished my term as a trust chairman, one of the strengths we had was that we built fantastic relationship with the doctors. You know, they were our colleagues, they were our friends, we worked with them. And frankly, we didn't need to have some special unit that the freedom to speak up and all that. We had the relationship of trust, and we always said, look, however bad it is, for God's sake, tell us.
Yes. When you see some of the detail here, Martin, when you see more than 500 mothers and babies dying or suffering needless harm in the biggest maternity scandal in NHS history, women repeatedly put at risk, treated with cruelty and brutality at this toxic NHS trust in Nottingham. Warnings ignored, women in desperate pain turned away, more than 160 lives lost as a result, 94 stillbirths, 62 deaths of newborns and 6 deaths of women that could have been avoided with better care, highlighted in this report. Many women coerced into staying at home for far too long, despite being in labour, amid a culture of bullying, gaslighting and victim blaming. This is the NHS that we're paying hundreds of billions of pounds for, and these women did not receive even a basic service.
And frankly, Peter, had it been a fraction of 500, if it had been 20 or 10, it would have still been absolutely scandalous. And I just don't believe that the board didn't realise this was going on. I really don't believe that. Whatever efforts were being made to sort of cover up and hide it, where were the non-executive directors? Were they just sitting in board meetings, writing papers and chairing committees? Or did they get out into the wards and talk to people and ask them how? I mean, I just find it extraordinary that this could be going on and nobody knew. It reminds me, of the... I wasn't told that Peter Mandelson had failed his security vetting. because
Yeah.
nobody told me.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
as a
it's your responsibility to know these things. Kate Brentworth, who's Chief Midwifery Officer for England, said, "I am so sorry for the heartbreaking loss, grief and pain experienced by women and families at Nottingham. My thoughts are with those that have been harmed, bereaved or let down by the care they receive. They have shown extraordinary courage in speaking up, and their voices must be at the centre of how the NHS responds. We've introduced new national clinical standards which are helping prevent harm and ensure women get urgent maternity care more quickly, and local leaders and staff in Nottingham are working hard to address these feelings. However, the report shows the scale of what needs to change. I know it can be worrying for women using maternity services. Please continue to speak to your midwife and maternity team if you have any concerns." I mean, is that good enough? Because they're saying we've introduced new national clinical standards which are helping prevent harm. I mean, none of what happened, none of what I have told you, none of the detail that have been there should have happened anyway under existing standards that were there, Martin.
You're absolutely right, Peter. I don't think there's any answer. It's an answer that can look quite impressive to those who value data and all the rest. The fact is that the culture is poor. The recognition that people get. I mean, I had people when I was working in the NHS. I visited wards and said, "I've just been talking to one of your patients, Mrs. So and so. You know, she's really pleased with the care she's getting here. She thinks you're all heroes." And just mentioning that to people. I know it sounds like a small thing, but you have to provide an atmosphere where people are valued, where and the more they're valued, the more they feel that they've got to always do the right thing. Quality is not about somebody else sweeping up after you. Quality is about day-to-day, minute-by-minute decisions that you make, either to work to quality or not to work to quality. And probably the quality guidelines that were in place for that unit in Nottingham were perfectly okay before this was ever done. The fact was that people were not motivated sufficiently to adhere to them. And that's the core of what we have with the NHS, which is too big. It's too, forgive me saying, but too unionised as well. And that relationship between the the delivery of the services and the people who manage the trust is just not strong enough and not respectful enough.
You absolutely do not need to seek forgiveness for saying the NHS is too unionised. I absolutely agree with you on that, particularly when it comes to the BMN, the junior doctors, and that is what they're called. They're called junior doctors. I'll not use their new name. Thank you very much, Martin. Lots to think about in all of what you've said there. Really interesting analysis. Martin Gower there, who's a former NHS Trust chairman. Chris in Newbury has been in touch and says, "Peter, between 2003 and 2005, 10 babies died at Northwick Park maternity unit in London. My daughter was born in 2003 and nearly died after a midwife refused to send my wife for an emergency caesarean section. Natural birth was the preferred option. Thankfully, a consultant forgot his notepad, came back and rushed my wife to theatre. It's not recent. Maternity leadership from the Midwifery Council down has been a disaster for decades." Mark says a hospital is built around doctors, nurses and patients. Everything and everyone else is only there to make that relationship work. Fiefdom building should not be tolerated. Darren in Bradford says, "Peter, I'm extremely concerned about what's going on in our ambulance service as well as the NHS. My son, who's 18, who I'm not going to name, is the first responder for the ambulance service. They're using him for the next 4 days on the East Coast because they need cover because they don't have enough staff. I'm appalled how the ambulance service get an 18-year-old first responder to do this. Why have we not got enough staff to cover this?" Another person says, "Does anyone understand the breakdown in management of the NHS? It's not as if there aren't enough managers. It's as simple as getting old-fashioned matrons back in charge." That has been the case in some parts of the NHS, it must be said. Maybe it's just so difficult to fire staff management, don't want to investigate reports of bad conduct. And Amanda's been in touch about the Bill Gates scandal, breaking news. No mention of Mandelson, says Amanda. Not in the copy I've seen anyway, but of course he's certainly someone who has had bad judgment when it comes to his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein at the very least. Betty says, "I've installed many of those fancy electronic cat flaps over the years for our 18-year-old cat. Every time I say I can program up to 60 different cats and wonder what's the point after 30 or 40, or after 3 or 4. Gosh, there's a Freudian slip because I want so many cats. Another person says, surely if Starmer quits as Prime Minister, he should quit as well as an MP. You can give me technically the answer, no all you want, but he's quit and stood as leader of the party. He should go. Well, he could well stay as an MP until the next election. He could stand again. He could stay in Parliament again. He can do what he wants, really. Theresa May, for example, stood in the 2019 election. She stayed on even though she wasn't Prime Minister anymore. She's now a member of the House of Lords. Lots to discuss in all of this. We'll get to your calls, text, tweets and voice notes. Coming up next, do give me a shout. 0344 499 1000. So much to talk about between now and 10.
We've got some breaking news that has just come in. talkSPORT have announced a brand new partnership in a developing story. We hear they've created So Good Lager right in time for football's big summer. Just in, we're hearing that So Good Lager will be pouring pints across all O'Neill's pubs and some of the best sports pubs across the UK. With the big kickoff just around the corner, you can find out where to get your hands on a fresh pint of So Good Lager at talksport.com/lager.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Maria's been in touch and says, Peter, we had problems with our mother's local hospital, and when I spoke to a cousin who worked there, she said nothing will happen, your complaint will lie on the top with all the others. Mark says, I'm sitting in a natural breeze in my kitchen created by opening a north-facing window and a south-facing door. The cool air is drawn in through the window and out the door. Don't ask me how window and door are on the same level. Well, they do say that when it gets a bit darker. Oh, it's pretty dark here in London where I'm sitting in Talk Towers. When I get home, it'll probably be about 11 o'clock, something like that. I'm going to have a bit of dinner, watch a bit of telly, and then open the windows, I think, probably throughout the night, and set an alarm nice and early in the morning to close them before it gets hot, and just let the air circulate, basically. Maybe even keep the front door open for a little while while I'm up, because it is just very, very hot here in London. About 30 degrees earlier. Did we find out what temperature it is now? It's 29. It's going down a tiny bit, but good luck to everybody sleeping tonight if you are in the southern half of the UK. And we never forget that 82% of our viewers and listeners do not live in London, and we are not a London-centric station, unlike basically everybody else. Don't get me started on journalists talking about trains. We'll be here all night. Ernie says, we know exactly the outcome of the grooming gang inquiry in London. Someone will be sent to see Sadiq Khan, and he'll say, I don't know what you're talking about. What exactly do you mean? There's no such thing as a grooming gang in my city. He can close the door on that one. Job done, says Ernie. Well, in fairness to Sir Sadiq, Knight of the Realm, who is the Mayor of London, he has changed his tune on it recently. Another Labour U-turn. Right then, let's speak to Gareth in Derbyshire, who has some thoughts about moving some of the government north. Gareth, we know that a bit of the Treasury's in Darlington. Would you be happy for a bit of number 10 or the Cabinet Office to be in Manchester?
Well, yeah, because apparently Andy Burnham suggested he's going to move Downing Street to Salford or something like that.
He says he wants to remove some of the functions to the north of England. Are you happy with that, or should they be in the capital?
No, I think he's hit the nail on the head, to be honest. I think we need to move the focus of government outside London, because London's had everything, hasn't it?
It is the capital city. I mean, it is the biggest and most important city in this country.
Yeah, but we need to refocus, you know, the economic dynamism of not just north of England. It could be anywhere in the provinces. It could be Bristol, it could be Scotland, it could be Wales, it could be Newcastle.
But what about the physical Gareth, what about the physical proximity? Because if you have someone working in the next office who can just nip in for a meeting rather than being on Zoom or Teams or whatever, can actually just come in and say, you know, we just need to fix this or sort this out. Is it not better to have people together? I mean, would you move the whole of the government elsewhere? Is that reasonable when you've got the House of Commons, House of Lords in bang in the centre of London?
Yeah, I think what I'd do is I'd make the House of Commons into a museum, and I'd move the Parliament somewhere else. I'd move it. You could even share it. You could move it to Manchester. You could move it to Leeds. You could move it to Derbyshire.
But what's going to happen, Gareth, if some politician says that that's a good idea, that you know, let's move the House of Lords to Matlock or whatever, which I think would be lovely. Matlock's a lovely place in Derbyshire. You would incur a huge cost. You would have a lot of people who, you know, if you have like the European Parliament, for example, some of it's in Strasbourg and then it's in Brussels the rest of the time. You got to move the whole thing. You got to move people, you accommodation. You have people who are working in Parliament. I'm not talking about the MPs. I'm talking about, you know, the cleaners who work there. I'm talking about people who live in London and their families are in London. The administrators, security guards, and all the rest of them. Would you move all them up, or would you just make them redundant, or what would you do?
I think you just need to have a plan so everything isn't London-centric. Because, I mean, look, even if you take, like, football, for instance, to play all the England games at Wembley, cricket tomorrow, we're going to play a test match in Nottingham.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they'll play one in Manchester and Leeds. It's just, we need to, like, make the country, we need to make it stronger in its other parts, because London's just had too much for the last 40 or 50 years. We need to have a new plan. And I think. Do you think?
I mean, if you think of what the BBC has done, which has spent an awful lot of money moving quite a number of things, like BBC 5 Live, for example, to Salford, has that worked?
Well, I think it's a good idea. I think it just moves the focus away, so everybody's just not stuck in that sort of inside the M25.
Okay.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, we've got good parliaments. They've built in. There's one in Edinburgh, isn't there? Is it Holyrood?
Yes.
There's one in Cardiff.
Yes.
There's no reason. I mean, you don't have to have big parliamentary.
But they're in the capital cities of the respective countries which they govern.
Yeah, but they're still United Kingdom. You know,
yeah, well, I know what you mean, but, you know, the government of the United Kingdom surely should be in the capital of the United Kingdom, no?
No, I don't think so. I mean, where's the government of Germany? Where's that?
Berlin.
Yeah, but I mean, where was it before Berlin?
Well, it was in Bonn when it was West Germany, but that's a very long time ago. But it's in Berlin now, in the Bundestag in Berlin. So, I mean, that's where the capital is now.
But Germany's got a better method of devolution where the areas. Like,
yeah, the Länder. I know what you mean. It's interesting, actually. In some countries, they do it differently. Obviously, Washington D.C. is not. It's the capital, but you have, you know, New York's the media and financial capital. Los Angeles is the showbiz capital. In Australia, Canberra is the governmental capital, whereas Sydney's the largest city. But surely these things happen organically. We can't just make a decision and say, you know, we're going to move everything out to, you know, Pembrokeshire.
Well, personally, I think Matlock would be a perfect place. I think Derbyshire would be wonderful.
Derbyshire is gorgeous. Do you know, I lived in Derby. I worked for BBC Radio Derby for 3.5 months. Lovely people. And, I mean, Derby as a city itself is okay, but the Shire is just beautiful. Places like Matlock, places like Buxton as well. I remember going to Buxton, lovely place there as well. Peak District in general really is just lovely.
Yeah, so, you know, we could have a parliament in Matlock. You know, Derbyshire Dales is lovely for that. So people would love it. And we don't forget, we're having the Great British Railways are going to be based
That's right.
in Derby.
That's right. Yeah, very good point. Very good point. Yeah, listen, thanks very much for that, Gareth. Appreciate that. Standing up for Derbyshire. That's Gareth in Derbyshire there. Let's go to Caroline in London on the rape gang. So you have some thoughts on this, Caroline. Go ahead.
Hi, Peter.
Hi there.
Great to talk to you. Okay, so this is very close to me. I've really been following this for quite a long time. I've actually read about 7 or 8 testimonies of some of the girls who were involved in the rape gangs with Rupert Lowe's inquiry. I mean, I didn't.
That report. I haven't read all of that report, but what I have read is harrowing stuff.
Yes, I mean, what does it take for a country like the United Kingdom, where for decades people in Parliament, the police, the judges, councils, social workers, care homes are burying this because of racism. Now, I don't care what colour you are, what hair you've got. Rape is rape. And yes, white men do rape, no doubt about it. But this is something very different. This is on a massive scale. And this inquiry in the government is going to do the waste of our money. I'm ashamed to be British. The world is watching. America is following this, and people are in shock. And the other point I wanted to mention to you, Peter, a friend of mine's half Pakistani. Well, her father's Pakistani, and she went there for a wedding a few months ago, and they're all saying, what the hell is going on in the UK? Now, I don't know much about it, so I don't want to mention names, but a certain type of a class system in Pakistan where this is the people that are here. I don't know where they come from, what area. And, you know, there's no way that would happen in Pakistan. No way. But the fact that we've got a country, I can't get my head around it.
Yeah.
People are burying it. Now, Andy Burnham is up to his neck in it. I'm sorry.
Well, listen, Caroline, Andy Burnham would strongly deny that he's up to his neck in that. And, well, OK, I just want to I want to keep us both out of court, and I want to say that Andy Burnham would strongly deny that. Right. Can I ask you a question, Caroline? Let me just ask you a question, because I want to continue the call. Do you have faith in this national inquiry?
1,000,000,000% not. What national inquiry, Peter, can you think of that ended up with the money we spent that got anywhere? I don't want an inquiry. I want people. There's a lot of information that the rape victims and Maggie Oliver and other people, they know names of people, names of police, names of social workers, names of the perpetrators. I want them arrested and tried. I don't want an inquiry. You and me don't have an inquiry. If we do something, we get taken to court.
Yeah.
What is this inquiry? It's a way of covering up, like the Iraq inquiry, you know, and all the other inquiries. No. And there's no way, and hence a lot of the girls are not going to be part of it because they know it's going nowhere. Okay. And it's devastating. This is such a stain on our history. And for any human being with any conscience or humanity, how can they turn away from this? As a human being, when you read what they've been through, it is so harrowing. And I don't understand human nature. Okay. And obviously power takes over. I don't know what else. Maybe you've got a thought.
Well, listen, you've made some really, really good points there, Caroline, and I think you've spoken for a lot of our viewers and listeners, and thank you for them. I appreciate that. That's Caroline in London there. Good evening, Peter. Says Brian, Parliament can be spread all over the country. All you have to do is have everyone working from home. Caroline in Norfolk says the benefit, I guess, of scattering government about the country is as if there's any kind of attack on the country, given we've no defence, at least the whole government wouldn't be in one place. Not that they're much use if we need to be defended. Another person says, no thanks, we don't want the van full of rubbish that is Westminster moving here. You can keep your dump in London, thanks. That's someone in Newcastle there. One person says, moving Parliament north is a symbolic gesture aimed at recapturing the red wall. The decisions won't be any better. And a really good one from Mark, who says, this has sparked a lateral train of thought. How much do surroundings influence decision-making? Suppose Parliament were in a rural paradise with birds singing instead of traffic and planes roaring. Would our politicians feel better and therefore think better? Well, it's sort of along those lines, Mark. I am going to have my trains rant, which I have probably about once a month, which is that journalists who are mostly based in London for national publications and national broadcasting are obsessed with trains, right? If you take a journey in this country, the vast majority of journeys in this country are taken by car. if you go on public transport, you're more than likely far, far more journeys by bus than by trains. How many articles have you read in the press? How much have you heard on the radio, on the TV about the state of buses in this country? You might have heard about the time when, you know, bus fares were put down to £2 or raising or whatever. But honestly, there's an obsession with trains in this country. I know loads of people, millions of people use the train all the time. You hear a lot about tube and tube strikes and all the rest of it. Tube strikes, I live in London and I'm affected by tube strikes if they go ahead. Think of how much you hear about tube strikes in London. How much do you hear about when, you know, the Glasgow Underground is dealt with, the Manchester Metro trains, the, you know, other parts of the country where there's, you know, a bus strike in Northern Ireland, for example. The fact is that we are a very London-centric place, and I try all the time. I don't always succeed, but as someone who's lived basically half my life in Northern Ireland, which is an often forgotten part of the UK, and now I live in London, I've lived roughly half my life in London, I try to always think, what is, you know, a person sitting in Bradford, sitting in Darlington, sitting in Belfast think of this story, rather than just thinking this is a London-centric story all the time. And that's part of the reason I love this station, because 82% of our viewers and listeners live outside London, and we're not obsessed with London in the way that so much of the media is, and so much of the political class is as well. So Mark makes a good point and has sparked my rant. So there we are. We're going to talk in just a second about flags, where it is right to fly them. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Right then, let's talk about flags. Alex Wilson is a member of the London Assembly for Reform UK and joins me now. Alex, good evening.
Good evening.
You're in front of a flag. There are people watching on telly and there are people listening on the radio. What is the flag that you're in front of?
It was actually a combination of two flags. So I've got the Essex County flag, county of my birth, very, very proud of that. And on this side is Normandy, the region in France where I do rather enjoy spending a lot of time. So both important flags for me, part of my broader identity, but of course today we're here to talk about the Cross of St George, aren't we?
Well, we are indeed going to talk about the Cross of St George in a couple of different ways. We're going to talk to Matthew Hulbert in just a second about his thoughts as well on Oxfordshire and what the Lib Dems have done there. Tell me about your petition, Alex.
Yeah, so I've launched a petition yesterday, asking for the Mayor of London to fly the Cross of St George on one of the 3 flagpoles that are outside City Hall during major international sporting tournaments, so football, cricket, rugby, obviously the World Cup going on at the moment. I think it's really important that we give a huge positive statement of intent to show that we're supporting the lads as they're doing their best out in North America. And I think it's ridiculous that as the capital city of England, as well as the capital city of Britain, the seat of government there does not have a Cross of St George flying at the moment to support our team as they're playing in that competition. It's absolutely ridiculous. I think they should, but I think they should for all these major sporting events. So the Cricket World Cup, the Rugby World Cup, Six Nations, all that kind of stuff, I think show a bit of pride, a bit of support in the guys that are representing our country and doing their best on the field.
What would you say to people who don't want to fly the flag, who see it as something which has been hijacked by certain groups of people, for example, who they don't like essentially? And I mean, I think it's very different actually. You know, coming from Northern Ireland where flags are definitely weaponised. I don't think it's the case necessarily in Scotland to any great degree. I don't think so in Wales. But the English flag is something that a lot of people just don't feel particularly comfortable with in some way. Most of our viewers and listeners do, and I certainly do. I have no issue with it. But it is something that there will be people who will disagree with your campaign. What would you say to them?
Well, respectfully, I would disagree. I think the England flag and the Union flag are both really positive statements of identity that everyone can get behind, regardless of your background, your class, your gender, your education, or indeed your cultural background. Everyone can get behind the symbol of our country, England, Britain, something we can all be proud of. And when we have a team that's very broadly reflective of society as a whole, that's playing on the football pitch, representing our country, representing all of us, I think there's no excuse whatsoever for us not to be supporting that. So that's why I've launched the petition. If any of your listeners, viewers want to sign it, you can find it at tinyurl.com/flytheflagforengland. Had 1,000 signatures already, hoping to get very, very many more, and then I'll be presenting that at the meeting of the Assembly in the
I want to talk a little bit about Oxfordshire, and Matthew Hulbert joins us now. He is a Liberal Democrat activist and political commentator. He's going to be on the debate desk in a couple of nights' time, and we're looking forward to seeing you down here in London, Matthew. Can you just, it would be very easy for me to simply say, evil Lib Dems say a flag shouldn't be flown in Oxfordshire. It's a bit more complicated than that. Just tell us about what has happened here.
So good to be with you, Peter, and hi to Alex as well, and of course to your viewers and listeners. Well, so today I have actually phoned one of my colleagues, a Lib Dem colleague. I'm in Leicestershire, but I phoned a Lib Dem colleague on Oxfordshire County Council, who has told me what the actual situation is. So what has happened is that a particular group of people, I believe they're called Raise the Colours, have reportedly, allegedly, been causing more than a bit of a nuisance, and that is putting it very mildly, in Oxfordshire in regards to putting up flags, allegedly intimidating residents, allegedly harassing council staff, and an injunction was taken out on them from being able to put up flags on flagpoles in Oxfordshire. As my colleague has said to me, residents can and are encouraged to put up England flags if they want to during the World Cup, at their houses, at their places of residence, and indeed some Lib Dem councillors on Oxfordshire County Council, I'm told, are indeed doing that. So I do fear that this story has in of itself been weaponised, Peter.
Well, I think it has, and that's why I wanted to know exactly what the facts were, and I wanted to give you time to make sure that you got them out there. The fact is, and coming from Northern Ireland, I know that flags can be weaponised, and Alex is right that it can be a symbol to unite around, but it can also be a divisive thing as well. Is that what you think has happened in Oxfordshire?
I can't comment about Oxfordshire. I can give you my view.
Sure.
My view, I'm afraid, Peter, and I think you know this, is that I fear that that our flag, in inverted commas, has rather been hijacked by the hard right and the far right, and I'm very saddened about that. Of course, I wish that we were all able to see it as a national symbol that we could all get behind, but I'm afraid that has been made difficult, to say the very least, because of the actions of a minority of people.
Alex, what would you say to that? Do you agree with Matthew, or do you think he's wrong?
I'm afraid, Matthew, I don't agree. I think that it's been fantastic seeing right up and down the country, this kind of explosion of Union flags and St George's flags on lampposts, on walls everywhere. I think it's a really positive, exciting thing to show that people care about their country, our country, and want to take pride in it. And I think it's quite disturbing, really, that what's happened here in Oxfordshire. The idea that if someone was now to fly a flag from a lamppost, they could be facing up to 2 years in prison. I mean, that is really, really chilling.
But I'm assuming, Alex, that if, as has been reported, and if has been told to me today, there have been issues around alleged intimidation and alleged harassment from people involved in putting some of these flags up, I assume you would agree that that is not acceptable.
Well, that's a different matter altogether. People are being abusive and harassing and so on. Then, that's obviously something that isn't right. But the mere act of flying the flag and taking pride in the Cross of St George, in the Union flag, that I think is something to be welcomed and not to be going to the High Court to get an injunction against. I think it's I'm sure Oxfordshire got much more important things to worry about, filling in potholes, school places, all those really important things that the county council is there to deliver. Chasing people for flying flags, I think, is a ridiculous waste of council.
Hold on a second. I would love to have as much pride in the flag as you do, Alex. Coming from Northern Ireland, I can honestly say, Union flag, that is the flag of my country. I don't think anybody should not fly it if they don't want to. But what I've seen in my own life is both the Union flag and the Irish flag, the tricolour, being used to mark out territory and to intimidate people in that way. I mean, do you accept that that can be something that some people use the England flag for, Alex?
Well, I think the case of Northern Ireland is a particularly special one, and obviously there's a huge amount of history and backstory to that. But I think with the England flag, I think it's a really good opportunity for everyone to claim it, everyone to take pride in it, and whatever your cultural or class or religion, whatever your background is from that way, it's a really positive unifying force that everyone should be able to get behind. And coinciding with a major sporting event is the ideal opportunity for that to happen.
Okay, final thought from both of you. First of all, Matthew.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd like to ask Alex a question, maybe a rhetorical one, given that I think we're coming to an end here now, which is, he's talked about pride in flags. Well, at the moment, it's Pride Month, where we celebrate LGBT plus community. And to my knowledge, a lot of reform-led councils now are not allowing, during Pride Month, the rainbow flag to fly from the councils that they run. If we're going to have pride in flags, how about that?
Well, I don't need a pride flag to celebrate my sexuality. I have a wedding ring, thanks to the coalition government. So, I think it's right that public buildings should be flying Union flag, England flag, or Scotland flag, or Welsh flag, or the county flag. But we don't need. I mean, we don't need a rainbow flag to celebrate our sexuality. Say, I've got a wedding ring that does that. Thanks to the coalition government, which hopefully you're a supporter of. I was at the time, but that's the way that I celebrate my sexuality.
Matthew?
Well, I just note that some flags he likes and some flags he doesn't. Well,
there are some flags I like and some flags I don't like. I mean, I think that the one flag I don't mind and have no issue with is the rainbow flag. One flag I do have an issue with is the rainbow flag that has the trans symbol on it as well, because that is a political debate. That is something that is not a settled issue. That is something that people have views on and is a very divisive issue. So I would argue that there aren't too many people who worry about rainbow flags these days, but there are people who have views on the trans issue, and that is absolutely an issue which is a political issue. And I'm not sure that organisations like the NHS, for example, should be flying those flags. Matthew.
And we've discussed that previously, Peter, and I'm sure we'll do again. I mean, so look, I mean, I think the issue in Oxfordshire has been blown up. That was about a particular group of people who apparently weren't behaving in a way that we would want. And that is why Oxfordshire County Council has taken the decision that it has and has gone to court for an injunction. But people in Oxfordshire, and Lib Dem councillors are among those doing this, can fly England flags from their homes during this World Cup.
Okay, Alex, what's married life like? Is it good that gay people can be as miserable as straight people?
Well, absolutely. It's something we can all share together.
Thank you both very much. We're all laughing at the end of that. Quite serious debate. Thank you both to Alex Wilson, the Reform UK London Assembly member, and indeed to Matthew Hulbert, the Liberal Democrat activist, who's going to be on the debate desk here in London on a Friday, and we will see him there. The former Defence Minister Al Cairns, who's been rumoured to be interested in succeeding Keir Starmer, has said the country needs a proper debate about where we go next. He has put a tweet out with his 5 tests. It's very long, but he's talking about the frontline test. Do we give people in the front line the kit they need? The next generation test. Are we handing the next generation a better deal? The £1 trillion test. Is the plan to add £1 trillion to what Britain earns, or to manage the decline more politely? The 10% test. Can we make a country work 10% better instead of only asking for 10% more? And the lights on test. Does our energy policy keeps the lights on, the bills down and the factories open? I'm not going to read it all out because it's very, very long, but clearly he's throwing down the gauntlet to Andy Burnham. Maybe we'll talk more about that. In fact, we will ask Al Cairns to come on the programme tomorrow night to talk about it, and hopefully he will do that. It's a lengthy post anyway. He stopped short of saying he would challenge Andy Burnham for the job of Prime Minister, or that he had enough support for Labour MPs to launch a challenge. But Mr Cairns, who resigned as Armed Forces Minister, we talked about that to him on the programme last week. He set out these tests anyone asking to lead our country should be able to agree with. So perhaps we will discuss that a bit more tomorrow, maybe even with Al Cairns himself. We will ask him if he'll come on the programme again. I'd love to talk to him again. Mark says, of course the flag is a symbol of identity. If people feel threatened by unfettered immigration, flying the flag is a perfectly legitimate way for people to signal the message that this is their country. It is their country, built by their forefathers over centuries. You cannot take that right away from them. Brian says the people of Oxford have an opportunity to make their point, vote the sitting council out. And Robin says, I am Scottish, half English and have no interest in football at all. However, I think that this flag hate is disgraceful. My English friends fly your flag high and proud. If lefty woke idiots and others who hate our country object to them, well, what is wrong with these people in our country? Most countries are proud to fly their national flag. Peter, I understand your point about flags in Northern Ireland being flown to mark territories and understand the politics there, but in mainland Britain, this is a different matter, says Robin. Serena says, yet another distraction with all the other important matters, and here we are discussing flags and criminality. Flags can be misused, but we must focus on the real matters at hand. Well, Serena, I think I agree with you, but we do need to talk about a variety of issues, and it's an issue that certainly a lot of people are responding to anyway. Another person says they don't like the flag because the flag represents our history, and Britain is now full of people who would like to either erase or rewrite that history, and that is the best reason to fly it. Chris says, so if we move Parliament around the country, will we get better decisions? So if we move to Rotherham, will we get better decisions on rape gangs? If we moved it to Glasgow, will we get better decisions about putting men in women's prisons? If we moved Parliament to Wales, will we get better decisions on 20-mile-an-hour speed limits? And let's finish with Birmingham, where we would get better decisions on bankrupting the entire city. The regions are so idiotic as London, if not more so, he says. And a slightly tongue-in-cheek message from Betty, who says, Belfast and Bangor get brand new buses every September. Well, certainly there have been buses burned out as a result of that rioting that happened previously. We'll talk to Petri in a second about what's coming up in her programme. We'll have more text, tweets and calls as well. Let me just read out what Carol said about the NHS. Carol in Liverpool says, last year I had to call an ambulance for my sister. I was told the wait was 4 hours and I knew she would be dead then. 5 minutes later, thankfully it arrived. They said they had a 7-minute response. I'm sad to say that she did die. Archangel says, Lara Bird, the SNP MP with the strange accents, represents our growth with home to a military base, home to 45 Commando Royal Marines and others. Her disrespect for the oath is disrespectful to them and the oath of allegiance they took. She should be made to do it again like Clive Lewis. Chris says, as you're talking about accents, please can you say the following in your own accent? I looked out of the window and during the shower I saw a woman carrying a mirror use a handbag to flatten a flower. Go on, be a good sport. How now, brown cow, Chris, is all I can say to that. More after the break. Stay with us.
We've got some breaking news that has just come in. talkSPORT have announced a brand new partnership in a developing story. We hear they've created So Good Lager right in time for football's big summer. Just in, we're hearing that So Good Lager will be pouring pints across all O'Neill's pubs and some of the best sports pubs across the UK. With the big kickoff just around the corner, you can find out where to get your hands on a fresh pint of So Good Lager at talksport.com/lager.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to Lenny in Ashford, who says, I believe the country urgently needs a positive contest, but not possible with Labour ideology. It is easy to understand why the world believes our country has been radicalised. I believe the actions of the King and Starmer make it difficult to think otherwise, in Lenny's opinion. Les says that Nurea's conversation with me was insightful and hard-hitting. Total respect to Nurea, says Les. Totally agree with you on that, Les. Thank you. Nick says, I know you say Bridget Phillipson is not spiteful. On the other hand, Peter, everything Labour have done, including the Chagos Island giveaway, seems to have been done through spite. The pensioner heating allowance, spite. The farmer, spite. The list goes on. Another person on Twitter says, I completely disagree with John Rentoul over Kemi's comments at PMQs. Starmer has spent 2 years ruining the country and demonising the electorate as being far-right thugs. I don't think she went far enough. The truth hurts no matter what the speaker thinks. Let's hear a voice note from Elisa in Chelmsford.
Peter, when I was pregnant with my son, something happened to my hormones which caused me to be covered in a pussy rash from my torso down to my feet. It lasted for several months. It was itchy. It was so uncomfortable. I was in tears. And every time I went to the NHS to seek help, they just turned me away and told me I'd have to get on with it. Eventually, I sought help from a private consultant, and he was able to give me something to relieve the symptoms. I don't know what I'd have done if it wasn't for him. Now, people talk about how beautiful it is to be pregnant, but they don't tell you that sometimes things don't go according to plan. Becoming a parent is amazing, but it can also be extremely traumatic. I feel it's utterly disgraceful that some of these people have been treated, these parents and the unborn children have been treated like pieces of meat and discarded. Simply heartbreaking, unacceptable.
Really good points there, and thank you for them. There's a lot to get into with all of that, and please do keep getting your calls, text, tweets and voice notes coming in. We have a few minutes left of the programme. Let me just tell you now, we've been talking about the weather and animals earlier this evening, but it's not just here in Britain where things are heating up. The FIFA World Cup has officially kicked off across Canada, Mexico and the United States, and Scotland are playing tonight. It's 11 o'clock. That's, of course, live on talkSPORT, and they are against Colombia? Brazil, sorry, it's Brazil. Apologies, I knew it was somewhere South American. Brazil are against Scotland. That will be 11 o'clock live on talkSPORT. Thank you to Sam, the tech up, for reminding me of that. Here at Talk, we are celebrating the summer of football in style. How do you fancy getting your hands on a massive £26,000 in tax-free cash? That's right, £26,000 could potentially land in your pocket with a few clicks of a finger. Whether you want to clear the bills, book a luxury holiday, or just live a little bit better this summer, it's a truly life-changing amount of money. If your bank balance could use an upgrade, here is everything you need to know.
For your chance to win, visit talk.tv/win or text TALK to 83338 by 6 p.m. on the 20th of July 2026. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or send your name and number by post to Comp 1, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by midnight on the 23rd of July 2026. 18 plus, UK residents only. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win.
Thank you to Elle, who's been in touch about accents as well. She is a former actress, and she says a warm-up exercise that she had was to say a proper cup of coffee in a proper copper coffee pot. Wow, that's a tongue twister if ever there was one. Lots on accents this evening, and indeed on all the other topics we're talking about. Grace is on the line about flags. She's ringing from West London. Grace, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
I'm reminded by that tongue twister of school assemblies with a teacher who used to make us sing that amidst, various tongue twisters he had us do. I think that I'm not massively a fan of flags. I think it might, again, link back to when I was in primary school, and I mostly saw flags being waved by people who were massive football fans, but also really mean to me because I was quite bullied by boys in my class who were also big fans of football, and I hadn't seen many flags around prior to that. But that's an irrational reason for me to have particular.
But you associate that, you associate those sort of flags with hatred. I mean, I can honestly say my initial reaction, certainly when it comes to how the Union flag and the Irish tricolour were weaponised in Northern Ireland, is, I mean, I wish I was prouder of the Union flag. I wish it was something that I could look at and think completely without any thought of how it was used as a sectarian symbol in many ways, and how the Irish tricolour has been used as a sectarian symbol. I think, you know, flags are kind of devalued in many ways. The Palestinian flag has been massively devalued, and I think those people who want to unite around the Palestinian flag and want to have freedom, including freedom from Hamas, have been there's been a disservice there. You look at places like Japan, you look at places like Denmark, you look at places like... I was in Cornwall last week, a few days off. Loads of people flying the Cornwall flag, the county flag. It's a white with a black cross. And it was lovely. They're just really proud of their county. You know, you look at America and there's certain kind of guidelines as to how people fly the flag. A flag has to be lit, for example. Oh, is the phone ringing? Do you need to go, Grace?
Hi.
Oh, Grace? No, she's gone. We'll bring Grace back if we need to, but I think she's perhaps lifted the phone to find out what has happened there, and maybe someone's ringing to say, I heard someone who sounds a lot like you on the radio. So there we are. Thank you to the person who's texted in to say, you've crammed a lot in tonight, Peter. I managed to walk the dog a short while ago, but I took you with me. Great show. Let's hear from Heather in Garvan in South Ayrshire. Heather, I know you have some thoughts on the rape gangs.
Yeah, I know we haven't got much time to talk about it much, but I would really seriously... I've been reading this Rob Law report on the rape gang, and it mentioned in a small paragraph about Keir Starmer when he was Director of Public Prosecution, and he handed warnings to the rape gang and to paedophiles, letters of warning, and they're being let go. That was Keir Starmer's downfall of all this.
Well, he certainly...
Maggie Oliver, she mentioned it in one of Daily Express, because they did a real in-depth investigation into this.
And Heather, they've covered it.
She mentioned Andy Burnham when she used to work as a police officer.
I don't think Andy... Oh, well, you mean when Maggie Oliver worked as a police officer. Heather, I'd love to continue the conversation, but I just have to speak to Petri Hoskin. I'm sure that's an issue she will be covering tonight. Petri, great to see you. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
Did you manage in the heat today?
Just about, I must say, but what happened earlier was our boss, the Ayatollah of audio himself, Danny Morris, I went to sort of, you know that bit, there's a bit in our office, kind of you can go behind almost the soundproofing of other studios, basically where no one can see you. Yeah. And I changed from a T-shirt into a shirt, but in his office he could see through, so...
Was he spying on you?
Lucky guy.
Lucky guy, I mean, seriously. That's an HR, surely. Surely you can go to HR about that.
I think he's probably getting a pay rise to shut him up about how traumatic an experience was to see my moobs. Anyway, what's coming up in your show?
We're going to be talking about did Kemi Badenoch overstep today? It's interesting, isn't it? Because is it because she's a woman that people think this language is not acceptable? Do women get treated differently? I think they probably do in that regard. It's always like, oh, she was a bit feisty today, and if it was a bloke, they probably wouldn't have said any words like it. But she was told off, of course, wasn't she?
Yeah, but we don't know exactly what she was told off for.